News Channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Thursday, the 11th of September. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Dawn Neeson.
Now, incredible breaking news in the last hour or so. Peter Mandelson has been sensationally sacked as the UK's ambassador to the United States over his relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein.
Indeed, and in a huge news day, the murderer of Charlie Kirk is still at large. America are waking up to that manhunt this morning as Donald Trump reacts to what he's called a dark day for America.
For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst.
Yes, with the killer at large, the tributes keep coming in for Charlie Kirk, a devoted family man who was married with 2 young children.
And it's the anniversary of a day that changed the world forever. You will remember it, obviously. Later in the show, we'll be live at a memorial service for the people who were killed in the 9/11 attacks.
Elsewhere, Prince Harry is flying back to California today. We'll get more reaction to his first meeting with the King for 19 months. Ten days ago, the Prime Minister declared this was phase 2 of his government. This was going to be a brand new start, a fresh page, a new leaf. Since then, he lost his Deputy Prime Minister.
Careless.
There's been a radical cabinet reshuffle.
Very careless.
And now he's lost his ambassador to the United States.
Extremely careless. It is, I mean, the front of today's Times, Starmer refuses to sack Mandelson as US envoy. A couple of hours later, Mandelson is gone. The Prince of Darkness has finally had that stake hammered through his heart. But he has risen from the dead before.
This is true, but what extraordinary judgment from the Prime Minister. Less than 24 hours ago, he stood there at Prime Minister's questions, asked 6 times about his involvement in the appointment of Peter Mandelson, what he knew, would he publish documents, will he sack him? And he backed him to the hilt. He had full confidence in his ambassador. Less than 24 hours later, he was gone.
The most worrying thing about this, Tom, is we have to question now the judgment of our Prime Minister. We really do, because he's a lawyer. Let's not forget, OK? He does things forensically, evidently, apart from when he is judging who is fit for what job. I think with Peter Mandelson, you needed to be incredibly stupid or incredibly willing to ignore certain issues to give Peter Mandelson the job in America.
I mean, it does seem very, very strange that he's changed his mind on this. So for a lawyer, clearly the Prime Minister's a bright man. Clearly, he does detail, but I wonder...
Does he?
We know we've had Prime Ministers before who do detail and perhaps get too bogged down in the detail. Gordon Brown, Theresa May, the kind of people who didn't do the big set-piece sort of chairman of the board thing, but tried to get into the nitty-gritty and then couldn't make decisions, were paralysed making decisions. Have we got a paralytic Prime Minister?
Not paralytic as in paralytic on the wine, no. I just think we have got a Prime Minister with extremely poor judgment, and I can't work out whether he is stupid, and I don't think he can be stupid given the jobs he has held in the past, or there is something more going on.
Is there just too much
really
pressure?
Don't understand.
I mean, he's veering from side... Do you remember when Dominic Cummings used to refer to Boris Johnson as the shopping trolley?
Yes.
Because you can't control a shopping trolley. It veers from one side of the aisle to the other, erratically. You don't know where it's going to go. Beginning to feel that Keir Starmer's becoming a bit of a shopping trolley. Veering from one issue to the next, U-turning again and again and again.
This is a job he has wanted for 14 years, at least, OK? You'd have thought he'd prepare for it. I just do not understand how our Prime Minister, in charge of all our lives, certainly with the budget coming up, very much in charge of what money you're going to have in your pocket, exhibits such incredibly poor judgment about the people he hires for the top jobs.
Well, there is so much of this to discuss over the course of this programme. We're going to be getting reaction across the political spectrum. And as America wakes up what is this morning in the United States, that manhunt continues for the killer of Charlie Kirk. Yes. All of that to come and more. But let's get your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just after midday. Let's start then with that breaking news in the last hour that we've just heard from Tom and Dawn regarding the departure and indeed sacking of Lord Peter Mandelson as Britain's ambassador to the United States. It's after emails revealed the true depth of his relationship with the paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein. It comes just days after the ambassador himself admitted further embarrassing emails were likely to emerge, including one in which he called Epstein his best pal. The Foreign Office says the correspondence was materially different, though, to what was known when he was appointed. Sir Keir Starmer had told MPs just on Wednesday he still had confidence in Mandelson. But today in the Commons, Foreign Office Minister Stephen Doherty confirmed his withdrawal.
The emails show, Mr. Speaker, that the depth and extent of Lord Mandelson's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein is materially different from that known at the time of his appointment. In particular, Mr. Speaker, Lord Mandelson's suggestion that Jeffrey Epstein's first conviction was wrongful and should be challenged is new information. And in light of that, Mr. Speaker, and mindful, as we all are, of the victims of Epstein's appalling crimes, he has been withdrawn as ambassador with immediate effect.
Well, that decision follows growing outrage across Westminster, with the Health Secretary Wes Streeting calling the messages disgusting and Home Office Minister Mike Tapp describing them as sickening. After pressing the government earlier with that urgent question, Tory MP Neil O'Brien said that Mandelson's removal was the only possible outcome.
This is yet another extraordinary error of judgment by this weak Prime Minister. And I pay tribute to the Leader of the Opposition for yesterday securing justice for the victims of Epstein. This raises massive questions. It is not just that Peter Mandelson said that Epstein was his best pal and that he loved him. It wasn't just that he brokered a deal for him while he was business secretary. We now, of course, know that he was working for Epstein's early release after he was convicted.
In other news this hour, a manhunt is underway in Utah after the assassination of conservative activist and close Trump ally Charlie Kirk. The 31-year-old was shot while giving a talk at Utah Valley University. Eyewitnesses say a figure on a rooftop fired a single round, hitting him in the neck. Kirk was rushed to hospital by his security team, but 2 hours later, the US president announced Kirk had died of his injuries. 2 people arrested earlier have since been released, and police say the gunman is still at large. Former presidents and world leaders, including Sir Keir Starmer, have condemned the killing. The Prime Minister here says it's heartbreaking and insists political debate must never descend into violence. Well, Donald Trump, visibly furious at that assassination, described Kirk as a martyr, blaming what he called radical left-wing politics for the attack.
Charlie Kirk traveled the nation joyfully engaging with everyone interested in good faith debate. His mission was to bring young people into the political process, which he did better than anybody ever, to share his love of country and to spread the simple words of common sense. On campuses nationwide, he championed his ideas with courage, logic, humor, and grace.
Donald Trump there speaking last night. Labour's deputy leadership race has narrowed again, with Dame Emily Thornberry pulling out after failing to gain enough support. Her withdrawal comes just a day after Alison McGovern dropped out, leaving now 3 candidates still in the running. They include the Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson, former Commons leader Lucy Powell and Belle Ribeiro Addy. The contest was triggered by Angela Rayner's resignation last week over her tax affairs. Britain is stepping up its support for Ukraine with plans to begin large-scale production of advanced interceptor drones. That drone, designed in Kyiv with British expertise, have already proved effective against the Iranian-made Shahed drones that Russia continues to launch, but at a fraction of the cost of traditional missiles. The move comes after NATO forces shot down suspected Russian drones that violated Polish airspace, the first known NATO engagement of the war. Defence Secretary John Healey has said the project is a first-of-its-kind deal, while the Prime Minister calls it a landmark moment. And Londoners are enduring a 5th day of tube chaos as RMT strikes have shut down underground services yet again. The union has rejected a 3.4% pay offer and is pushing for shorter working hours, demands TfL says they can't afford. RMT boss Eddie Dempsey says that he has called on Mayor Sadiq Khan to hold a summit, warning more strikes could follow if there's no breakthrough. And with trains at a standstill, e-bike trips have surged by up to 75% as commuters scramble for ways to get around. Those are the latest headlines. Stay with us for plenty more on that breaking news from Westminster and indeed in the United States. Next, though, let's take a look at the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GBNews Financial Report.
Midday markets for you. The pound will buy you $1.3503 and €1.1556. The price of gold, £2,679, 70 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 9,262 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GBNews Financial Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 10 minutes past midday.
OK, let's get to the huge news that broke just over an hour ago.
Yes, Peter Mandelson, the British ambassador to the United States, has been sacked over his links to the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein.
It's yet another huge blow for Sir Keir Starmer, just 5 days before Donald Trump arrives in the country for a state visit.
Well, delighted to be joined now by James Heal, the deputy political editor at The Spectator magazine. James, this was a sensational moment in Parliament at around 10:30. I mean, did many people see this coming? I suppose one person who might have done is the leader of the opposition.
Yes, so I think that this has been coming since the revelations first broke on Tuesday. But of course, Keir Starmer was in an almighty strategic bind. On the one hand, he obviously could see that this was politically toxic. It was an issue in the deputy leadership race that was going on. Lots of MPs were coming out. But on the other, he knows that Peter Mandelson has been able to ingratiate himself with Donald Trump. He wanted that state visit next week to go well. And there were even suggestions, perhaps, that if Mandelson went, this would somehow offend our American allies. So as a result of that, I think certain people within Downing Street were urging for him to go. Others wanted him to stay. But this morning, it seems, according to reports from Sky News, that Mandelson was determined to try fight on, but the Prime Minister said enough was enough. So it did come at 10:30 in the House of Commons. Lots of sort of looks of surprise, etc. But it does show that Kemi Badenoch was completely right to lead on that at PMQs yesterday.
What does it say about our Prime Minister, James? I mean, this is the thing I can't quite get my head around. A, giving Peter Mandelson the job as US envoy in the first place, and secondly, refusing to sack him up until this morning, obviously, when there has been so much come out about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
It doesn't say anything good, I'll say that, Dawn. I mean, I was in the chamber and there were plenty of good, loyal Labour MPs standing up, congratulating the Prime Minister on his decisive action. Of course, this wasn't particularly decisive, and he was there at the dispatch box yesterday, defending Peter Mandelson. So I think that if there was PMQs next week, it could have been a very good way for Kevin Baynock to have a go at him again next week. But I think it shows questions about his judgment. It also shows questions about his knowledge of the Labour Party, because this was never going to fly. I mean, one of his new Foreign Secretary's first priorities is about violence against women and girls. This was always going to be something that antagonised a lot of Labour MPs, privately and publicly, calling for him to go. And I think that, again, just 10 days after that call for a second reset, a second phase of government, we are back asking questions about scandal, what the Prime Minister knew and when. And the Conservatives now, Dawn, are going to try and get this issue keep on going by pressing in Parliament for documents to be released about the vetting process. So Labour MPs could be forced to vote to the House Commons on that, and that will then appear on their voting record. So I think that this story has got more left to run in it.
That is extraordinary. I mean, I'm still trying to get my head around why the Prime Minister, not just sort of lightly or obfuscatorily, but again and again and again, went full square behind his ambassador, this time yesterday. I mean, question after question after question. He said he had full confidence in Peter Mandelson, stood full square behind him. It seemed as if he was sort of tying his self to the political fortunes of Peter Mandelson. I mean, it's just extraordinary that he didn't even... If this was an option that Peter Mandelson could go, and many people thought he could, why was the Prime Minister quite so zigging one way, only to zag the other?
Well, this was the high-risk, high-reward appointment, and unfortunately it has blown up spectacularly. The risk was certainly not worth the kind of short-term 7 months they got out of it. I think within number 10 there was a sense that he would be able to build some ties with the Trump team. They didn't want to blow up the state visit next week, and of course Keir Starmer's always de facto position is to default to procedure when he's under pressure. But quite rightly, Kevin Baynock skewered him on that and actually was saying, look, this is completely analogous to many of the scandals that the last government found itself in. Why aren't you going to call for him to go? And I think once you're in a hole, stop digging, as famously Dennis Healey said. So unfortunately, the Prime Minister was there, caught in the spotlight, and 6 questions. He had to, as you say, bind himself to that fate. And again, it looks like he's reacting events rather than shaping them as he should do.
OK, James, thank you very much. That's James Hill, a Deputy Political Editor of The Spectator. The one thing I will say for Keir Starmer, I hope he's not a betting man, because he certainly doesn't back the winners, does he?
Well, he had phase 2 of his government, then Angela Rayner went. Was that
Angela
phase
Rayner,
3?
yeah.
Are we now on phase 4 of this government?
Is it another reshuffle of a reset, or is it another aim,
how many
or
resets, reshuffles?
Journey, or I don't know. I can't work it out.
Goodness me. We're going to jump stateside now. The latest on the killing of Charlie Kirk in the United States. Donald Trump has accused the radical left of being responsible for terrorism in the wake of Kirk's murder.
Yeah, the free speech champion who appeared on GBNews earlier this year was shot dead at an event in Utah Valley University. The killer is still at large.
Now, 2 people who were considered suspects have now been released. But here's what President Trump said last night.
For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now.
Well,
OK, joining us now is Republican Overseas UK spokesperson Jennifer Ewan. Jennifer, waking up to shocking news in the UK this morning. America waking up to a manhunt. This person is still on the run. Just give me your reaction to what has happened.
Sure. So this is, without a doubt, the biggest political assassination that's happened in my lifetime. We, of course, do not know who shot Charlie Kirk, but this was very targeted. This was very professional. And the irony of the fact that what Charlie Kirk was so good at was hearing from all sorts of voices. You know, he would go into these college campuses, and of course, some people would be very friendly towards him, other people would be hostile. And he would famously say, for those of you who disagree, come to the front.
Yeah.
That's who he wanted to engage with. And so I hope, you know, this tragedy has not happened in vain. And I hope what people can learn from on all sides of the political aisle is this is the way forward. What Charlie Kirk had done, this open engagement with all kinds of voices. He was so curious about what other people thought. I understand that he was possibly planning on going to one of the New York mayoral candidate Mondomi's rallies, just to sit there and talk to the young people and see, hey, why are you listening to this guy? What are your biggest issues? The president, the vice president, and indeed the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., this will be very personal for them. They all had personal relationships with Charlie. I think they'll be the first to admit that the reason why the Republicans did so well with the 18 to 29-year-old vote, you know, the youth vote for the first time in a long time, 20-point swing in some states, was because of Charlie Kirk. Yeah. He's a great American story. He came from, you know, very humble background. It's not like he had tons of connections. He didn't go to college. And he started Turning Point USA, and the world is a better place because we're having more open conversation and debate. And, you know, God bless him and his family and all the people who are close to him.
Now, it's extraordinary that there are so many resonances here. Watching some of that footage last night was harrowing. But it also was reminding me of looking at, was it Butler, Pennsylvania?
Yes, yes.
And had that shooter been an inch the other way, we'd have been talking about the death of Donald Trump. We've had the death of the United Healthcare CEO. We've had a spate of shootings over the course of the last 12 or 24 months in the United States that have targeted figures who could be associated with capitalism or the right. Is this a growing epidemic problem?
Well, you just named off a few pretty big examples, you know, especially 2 attempted assassinations on the, you know, on the president, well, the president, former and future president of the United States. So, yeah, this is a massive escalation of political violence. And while I don't think it does any good to blame one side or the other, the temperature needs to be turned down for sure. And the only way we can do that is to have more discussions, which is exactly what Charlie was doing. Now, this is scary because I know that people had spoken to Charlie after, Tom, what you just referenced, the Butler, Pennsylvania rally where President Trump was shot. And they said to him, look, Charlie, you know, you've got your podcast, but you are going out into these open air situations on these campuses. And of course, you know, he's got security, but he's like, I'm going to keep going. You know, so he very much knew what he was doing. He was aware of the dangers and he continued to do it. And it's ironic and crazy that he was killed for doing exactly what the rest of us should be doing, having open and curious political debate and no more violence.
He was only 31 years old.
Yeah.
He leaves a wife, Erica, and a little boy, a 1-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter. Obviously, thoughts with all his family. But it is quite astonishing. He rose from sort of like, you know, coming from just being a college student himself to becoming...
He didn't go to college.
Well, he dropped out of college, much to his mum and dad's horror, didn't he? He dropped out, but he was running... He came over to the UK and he went to the Oxford University Debating Society, ran rings around the people there. But the one thing, from what I can work out, Charlie never did. He was never advocated violence. His rhetoric was not the rhetoric we hear from both sides, the left and the right. It was always about the debate, not the hate. So for this to happen to someone like him says an awful lot about where we are with free speech, not just in America, but in the UK as well.
You're exactly right, Dawn. And the thing is, he was seen as a danger to some people, simply because he was trying to tone down the political rhetoric. He was, you know, very against violence. And what he was doing, which clearly is a threat to someone, is getting people with different views to talk it out. Not to say, you know, horrific things on the internet or, you know, just be aggressive towards one another, but to talk, because we all can agree on some things. And when you get humans together, one-on-one, discussing these issues, you find that we have a lot more in common than we don't, and that was clearly a threat to somebody. And again, we don't know who shot him, but to believe this was anything but some sort of a political assassination is naive.
It did look very professional, it has to be said. It was a single bullet.
Well, Jennifer Ewing, thanks so much for coming in and talking about this horrific assassination. Much more, of course, throughout the day here on GB News as that manhunt continues.
Yeah, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. There is lots more coming up on today's show. We will have the latest on Prince Harry as he gets ready to fly back to California after finally meeting up with his father. But after the break...
We'll get more on that breaking news that Peter Mandelson has been sacked as our ambassador to the United States. We're speaking to our political editor, who's just come out of number 10 Downing Street. You with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I remember being introduced to Ken Bates.
Chelsea champ.
Owned Chelsea, and just asked to sit down with him and then spend the next sort of 2 or 3 hours with him having lunch. And an ex of Donald Trump, Ivana Trump, his wife, and
Oh, you had dinner with her?
yeah, I remember having dinner actually with Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Did you?
You said earlier you couldn't think
You couldn't think of anyone. I was listing them.
I can't think of anyone. That literally just literally came into my head.
Hi, Catherine Zeta-Jones. Can we go back to that, please?
Catherine Zeta-Jones was... I used to live in a flat in Fulham, and I'm up at the top of the flat, and I was a sports reporter at the BBC, and I went round to Pizza Express, and I'm sitting eating, having my dough balls and everything else I was having, and reading the back pages of the papers in preparation for the work that I was doing the next day.
Yeah.
And I walked out of the cafe, and the beautiful, most stunning woman, Catherine Zeta-Jones, was walking by, and she said, "Oh, hello, Eamon." And then Welsh accent.
Really?
Hello, Eamon. How are you? And we were standing talking, and we were nattering away, and she said, "Anyway, why are we standing talking in the street? Have you eaten?"
And I went, said no.
I went, no, I didn't say no. I went, no. And I went inside, and I remember Pizza Express was empty, and the waiter saw me again, and I went and sat down with Catherine, and he said, "And you, sir, are you eating?" And I went, "Yes." He said, "What are you having?" I said, "Could I have the dough balls?" And I've never been able to eat dough balls again since.
GB News, the People's Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back. Let's get more on the day's huge breaking news. Peter Mandelson has been sacked as the UK's ambassador to the United States over his links to paedophile Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, delighted to be joined by the Conservative MP, Tom Tugendhat. Now, Tom, we were originally going to speak to you about something you said in Parliament yesterday. We'll get to that in a moment. But your reaction to this extraordinary U-turn from the Prime Minister today, that Peter Mandelson has been sacked as our ambassador to the United States?
Well, I think his position became untenable, and you heard Kemi Badenoch yesterday speaking at PMQs, grilling the Prime Minister about what he knew where and when, and Keir Starmer had no answers at all. I mean, he fell back on process. This isn't a process question, this is a judgment question. This isn't some diplomat who's been promoted through the system and, has merit in the job. No, this is somebody who Keir Starmer went out of his way to find and to appoint to represent us, all of us, in Washington, and clearly his judgment was very, very badly wrong. Now, that says an awful lot about the Prime Minister, and I'm very glad that Kemi was so clear in nailing that yesterday at PMQs.
Tom, this isn't the first time Keir Starmer's judgment has been called into question, is it?
No, you're quite right, I'm afraid. We're beginning to see quite a long pattern of this. You know, we saw him defending Angela Rayner, as you know, after that pretty egregious tax bill. We've seen him, appointing people in other ways and then dumping them very quickly, as he did with Sue Gray. You know, we're seeing somebody who, frankly, has no idea what leadership is about. Now, forgive me, I spent a number of years serving under some of the most impressive leaders that we've got in this country. And, you know, leadership is about judgment, it's about choice, and it's about who you surround yourself with. And all I can say is I'm seeing absolutely no judgment, some very poor choices and some appalling decisions on who he surrounds himself with.
Tom, you were pretty vocal when the Conservatives got rid of Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. You stood to be Prime Minister yourself. In those debates, you were perhaps the most clear-cut in calling out what you saw as errors of judgment, of sort of constant U-turns, of that sort of behaviour in Number 10. I mean, has anything changed with this new government?
No, do you know, it's funny you should mention that, actually. I mean, I was calling it out because we saw the constant U-turns that have resulted in things like our pretty extraordinary tax policies and the Boris wave and other things that, you know, they're a symptom. They're not the cause. They're a symptom of lack of leadership, lack of decision. And now what we've got, I'm afraid, is we've got it worse. Now, I was talking to a civil servant the other day, a very senior civil servant, who described this Number 10 as rather like Boris's Number 10, but with less direction and less leadership. I mean, it's pretty extraordinary.
Angela Rayner, Peter Mandelson, all within the space of a week. I mean, their situations were untenable. Everybody knew that, apart from their boss, obviously. Does this mean that Keir Starmer's own position is untenable?
Well, I mean, I think his position was untenable before he got the job, frankly. I never thought he was up to it, and now we're being proved right. I mean, the problem we've got is we've got somebody who came into office without a plan. And, you know, you don't have to take my word for that. Read Gabriel Pogren's book, which he published, I think, a few months back. Read what Christopher Hope Chopper is putting out through your channel and others. You know, these people are very well informed. They talk to the sort of spin doctors and the cabinet ministers and whatever else. And nowhere, from no one, are you getting any vision, any form of leadership, any form of direction? Look, this country is an amazing country. Yeah, look, we're broke. We've got some real trouble at the moment. But just look at the innovation in this country. Look at the opportunity. Look at the young people and look at what we could be making with it. We need to liberate capital, generate growth, and encourage our people to be free and spread their ideas, because, frankly, this could be amazing. And all we're getting at the moment is dither, and delay.
Well, Tom, you talk about the dither and delay at the top, the lack of leadership in Number 10. Is there also a lack of thinking in the House of Commons? Should we just take a look at what you pointed out on those green benches a little earlier this week?
I rise to speak, I rise to speak, I rise to speak. ChatGPT knows you're there, but that is an Americanism that we don't use. But still, keep using it, because it makes it clear that this place has become absurd.
Pretty strong language there. The House of Commons has become absurd. Why did you call that out?
Well, because, frankly, I've just had enough of it. I mean, you know, you don't have to listen to it all day, Tom. I do. And I listen to people who clearly haven't got a clue what they're talking about, who can't take interventions because they don't really know what the end of their speech says, who've effectively put a whip's briefing into ChatGPT and got it to spit out some words, which they haven't really read through. Now, look, I'm not against people using artificial intelligence. I use artificial intelligence. But make sure that the words that come out, the words that you want to speak into the House of Commons, are at least your own thoughts. You know, represent your people, represent your interests, represent your community, your politics, whatever it is. Otherwise, just email it in. It's much easier. It saves everybody time.
Tom, to be honest with you, lots of our viewers are saying that they'd rather have ChatGPT run the country at the moment than Keir Starmer.
Well, in that, I'm afraid I don't really disagree with them. But I'd much rather have political leadership running our country, frankly. I'd much rather have somebody who's got a vision for the country. You know, if you're telling me that what we need is management and AI would do it better, I'd agree with you. We don't need management, we need leadership.
And to be clear, with what you were pointing out there in the Commons, there are these phrases like "I rise to speak," which traditionally haven't been used in the House of Commons, because that's not what you say in British democracy. It's said in in the US House of Representatives and in the Senate. And because AI has been trained on mostly American data, we're now importing all of this weird Americanism to our own democracy. I mean, what does that say about our MPs?
Well, look, I'm not going to give you the other tells. The "I rise to speak" is the most obvious one, but actually there are a few others as well, which are complete giveaways that ChatGPT has written your speech. I'm not going to tell you what they are. Right. But actually, not very long Google searching, or in fact ChatGPT searching, will tell you roughly what they are. Look, I think it's pretty unhealthy. I mean, you know, part of the speech that I was making yesterday was on the Chagos Islands, and why I was so angry with the government on this is, of course, there's the military importance, and of course this is a strategic base, but much more fundamentally than that, this government is listening to the opinion of foreign powers and international organisations and not looking to defend the interests of the British people. Now, if you've got MPs who are constantly sort of spouting out the rubbish that is reprocessed by ChatGPT with Americanisms, you know, what's the point in Parliament? My job is to represent the British people. My job is the prosperity and happiness of the British people. My job is, you know, the future of Kent and the future of England and the future of the United Kingdom. That's my job, not to sort of repeat the platitudes of American politicians. Now, I like American politicians, you know, I'm very pro-American, but that's not my job. My job is to defend Britain, not to repeat what I hear from that. And all I hear from, you know, the Chagos Islands or any of these other sort of things that Keir Starmer or Lord Hermer or all these people talk about is telling me that they're not on the side of Britain, they're on the side of the international organisations, and they're not willing to fight for Britain. Well, frankly, then get out of the way and let somebody who will do their job.
Gosh, OK, well, Tom Tugendhat, thanks indeed for joining us live there from Parliament.
Yeah, it's in strong words. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GBNews. There's loads more coming up on today's show.
Yes, reaction to the news that the monarchy is less popular now than ever with the British public. That's come after your latest news headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. 12:30, the top story. Peter Mandelson has been sacked as Britain's ambassador to the United States after new emails revealed the true depth of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. It comes just days after the ambassador himself admitted further embarrassing emails were likely to emerge, including one in which he called Epstein his best pal. In the US, a nationwide manhunt is underway after the conservative activist Charlie Kirk was shot dead mid-speech at Utah University. Witnesses say a single shot from a rooftop hit his neck. Donald Trump calls it a heinous assassination and a dark moment for America. Labour MPs Emily Thornberry and Paula Barker have dropped out of the race to replace Angela Rayner as deputy leader. 3 candidates remain. MPs have just 5 hours left to secure enough support to progress. A major intervention on the ECHR. Suella Braverman, Richard Tice and Lord Frost have unveiled a roadmap to freedom today, setting out how the UK could quit the treaty. And in travel, tube services remain suspended on day 5 of the RMT strike over pay and hours. The London Mayor says TfL is ready to restart talks. Meanwhile, e-bike trips have surged as commuters find workarounds. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with the news at 1.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Good afternoon, Britain. 36 minutes past midday. Now, lots more coming up on today's programme.
Yeah, and next we'll speak to a royal expert on Prince Harry's trip to the UK, which featured his first meeting with the King since February 2024.
And we're expecting to catch up with our insider knowledge. Our political editor, Christopher Hope, should join us after a briefing from Downing Street over the resignation or indeed sacking of Peter Mandelson.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Lots of showers to come over the next few days. Gusty winds blowing them along mean there'll be some sunny spells in between the downpours. Low pressure is the reason why. Sitting just to the northwest of the UK, tightly packed isobars here, bringing some very strong winds over the northwest of Scotland. And, well, pretty persistent rain here for parts of the Highlands and the Western Isles. Elsewhere, as I say, we will see some sunny spells between the showers, which tend to zip through on that brisk and gusty wind. Temperature-wise, well, about average for the time of year. Feeling cooler than yesterday for sure. Certainly when the winds blow and the showers come along, it'll feel fairly fresh, generally 17 to 19 Celsius. As we go through the nights, a great deal of change. You can see the swirl there, the low pressure still dominant up to the northwest. The showers further south will ease off. Still plenty of them around for this evening's rush hour, however. A lot of spray, a lot of surface water on the roads. 1 minute it's dry, the next minute you're in a torrential downpour. There's the low pressure and the swirl bring more persistent rain to the Highlands and the Western Isles. Still pretty gusty here as well. The winds will ease a little bit overnight, but it's going to stay pretty breezy through the night. One thing we will see, certainly inland across many central and eastern parts, is the showers tending to fade away. So for many here, it will become pretty much dry from late evening onwards with decent clear spells. But it's far from dry in the northwest of Scotland. It stays pretty wet and windy here. Temperatures dipping down into single digits and a freshish start therefore to Friday. But for many, it will be a bright start again. Like this morning, much of the Midlands, eastern England, starting off with quite a bit of sunshine. But like today, the showers will get going once more and become pretty widespread, blown along by a fairly brisk and gusty wind. Again, like today, we could see a crack of lightning, hear a rumble of thunder, and temperatures around or a touch below average.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. Road users should be cautious on the A9 Dornoch Bridge due to high winds. In Cumbria, the M6 northbound entry slip at junction 37 is closed because of a vehicle fire, with expected clearance between 2:30 and 3. In Hampshire, an overturned vehicle on the A34 northbound has led to a lane closure, anticipated to be resolved by 3 o'clock. Cornwall's A30 westbound is experiencing lane restrictions after a collision, and on the trains, Avanti West Coast faces disruptions at Stoke-on-Trent, and Caledonian Sleeper has issues between Inverness and Perth. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 39 minutes past midday, and it's been a big week for the royals.
Yeah, King Charles finally sat down with Prince Harry for the first time face-to-face in more than a year and a half.
But as the tea was being poured at Clarence House, fresh polling revealed that the public's support for the monarchy has hit its lowest record.
Joining us now is royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. Richard, a very interesting day. For the first time in a year and a half, the two have sat down and had tea, or possibly something stronger, we don't know, together. Do we know any more about what they've discussed, what's happening from here?
Well, I'm delighted to tell you that we don't, and in my opinion, we shouldn't, because if there's really going to be reconciliation, the Sussexes are going to have to shut up. Now, that is an enormous ask, because, as you know, they brutally monetized their royal connections, and as you also know, of course, their relationship with the media, in fact, it's almost irresistible for them to comment. It makes things very difficult. 19 months ago, when Prince Harry did see King Charles, and this was as soon as he heard he had cancer, he came over. He was on Good Morning America shortly afterwards. We shouldn't have any of that. All of this, whenever possible, if there is to be reconciliation, to be a very, very slow business, in my opinion, it must be done privately and discreetly.
Richard, where do we think this meeting came from? Was it orchestrated by the King, or was Harry the instigator?
Well, that has been a matter of enormous speculation in recent weeks and months. What we know is that in July, royal aides met, and this was actually spotted, you could believe it's accidentally, by a photographer. I don't believe it was accidental. I believe it's part and parcel of a Sussex plan, but nonetheless, impetus gathered, and I think it's only, one must... reconciliation in any family, to some extent anyway, obviously, when there's serious illness, is very, very important. Prince William is quite correctly keeping his distance. And I have to say that we'll just have to see how the Sussexes behave in the coming weeks and months. This is going to be, in my opinion, a very, very slow process, and there will be all sorts of hiccups. Look at Harry on the BBC in May when he was spouting conspiracy theories when he lost his court case. But at least there isn't a court case at the moment that could cause problems.
Now, all of this comes at a time of difficulty for the royal family. There's a study, it's called the British Social Attitudes Study, and ever since 1983 it has asked the same question to a representative sample of the British people, which is, do you support the royal family? Now, in 1983, 86% said yes. The institution of the monarchy was very, very popular. This year, it's hit the lowest number ever. Still a majority, but barely. 51%.
Yes, that's, I have to say, it gave me a bit of a shock when I saw it as well. And then I saw something else. It's 2024. Now, I looked up the latest YouGov poll in this year. This is just last month. And I'm happy to say that at least it's 60-30 in favour of the monarchy. And when people are asked constitutionally, would they really want to change, and if so, what? 2/3 would roughly stick with what we've got, thank goodness, and 1/4 not. So it's not quite as bad as that. But I do think there are issues of concern here, because young people are, the majority are definitely Republican these days. And part of that I blame the Sussexes, because I think the drip, drip, drip of negative publicity over 5 years was pretty terrible. But on the other hand, we do have to look for other reasons. And as you know, politically, with the polls favouring reform and so many changes, the Labour Party down to 20%, Conservatives 17% in the last one I saw. So you've got a lot of shifting allegiances. And I can only hope that the monarchy remains as reasonably popular as it is and manages to gain. Remember, William and Catherine are, so to speak, the future of the monarchy, they and their family, and there's a tremendous amount of support for them.
Do you think that will make a difference, Richard? I mean, or do you think the monarchy now is just never going to really come back from, let's be honest, the death of the Queen? It was something we knew all our lives, and that has changed beyond everything that we think and feel about the royals. Losing her made such a huge impact on the royal family and every family in the country.
Yes, no, you're quite right about the Queen Elizabeth, because she was truly iconic and close to the hearts of almost all of us. I do think, however, it would be premature to say that the institution wouldn't be able to bounce back, because with changes and with the fact that from a geopolitical point of view, I mean, look at the importance it's playing next week in President Trump's visit. I mean, this might appeal to people in the polls, but it's absolutely pivotal. And also the messages King Charles has been sending to Ukraine as support, and also, of course, addressing the Canadian Parliament as King of Canada.
No, that was a very, very, very significant moment. I wonder if the passing of the Queen was a bit of a break from a moment. She was an individual who ascended to the throne back when the United Kingdom still owned a third of the world, for want of a better turn of phrase. Still, you know, she was around when Britain was the richest country in the world, when Britain was the superpower of the world. And now we're many things today, but we're not at the zenith of global power that we were. And I wonder if her passing sort of created a psychological break for the British people between our past and today.
Yeah, I do think that there have been such radical changes in Britain, yes, I think you're right, over recent decades. And looking back over the 70 years of the Queen's reign, it's very difficult to compare. It's a completely different country, and one also with, well, the soft power that it has. I mean, the monarchy is what basically is so beneficial now, and how the royals function internationally, particularly with President Trump's special fondness for the institution.
Well, that's the thing, it's the continuity of the institution that would be perhaps such an error to abandon, because, I mean, this country is nothing without its past.
Richard, one linking to the Constitution, can I just ask you one quick question about Peter Mandelson? Obviously good friends with Jeffrey Epstein. Prince Andrew, obviously good friends with Jeffrey Epstein. Why is it that Prince Andrew is banished from public life completely, and yet our Prime Minister, do you think, hung on to our Peter Mandelson. What's the difference between the two men?
Well, the difference between the two men, firstly, Prince Andrew was in the eye of the storm and gave that absolutely cataclysmic interview on Newsnight. And on top of that, he was never able to explain the 2001 photograph with himself and Virginia Roberts Giuffre. And subsequent to that, I mean, he has been a disaster area. Regarding Lord Mandelson, well, of course, he had been sacked before, twice, I think, in past years. Now, of course, it's occurred again, and again, this, you never know who is going to be tarnished next with the links to Epstein, and it's turned out to be him.
OK, well, Richard Fitzwilliams, thanks for joining us and discussing all of those issues. It's time for the British giveaway. Now your chance to win a new motorhome and 30 grand in cash. Let's have a listen.
You're not going to want to miss our greatest Great British giveaway so far. You could bank an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. And if that wasn't enough, you'll also get to drive away in this brand new motorhome. With thanks to Marquis Leisure, this brand new 2025 Benimar Primero could be yours. It comes with all the mod cons you'd expect from a vehicle worth over £74,000 and comfortably sleeps 4 people. This prize package is worth over £104,000. And remember, if you can dream it, you can drive it away. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. The winner will be contacted live on GB News, week commencing 10th November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck indeed.
This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Next, we'll have more on the murder of free speech champion Charlie Kirk in the United States as Donald Trump hits out at the radical left.
Yeah, but in a change of pace, if you are in search of some holiday sun, and who isn't this morning, it's a tough news day. Here is a forecast of some of those top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Northern parts of Europe will see any heavy downpours and thunderstorms easing away, though some light showers remaining in places. That's away from Spain and Portugal, though. High pressure dominating, so largely settled here. Plenty of sunshine, though we could see some occasional showers affecting Barcelona. Also some showers across northern parts of Italy, Switzerland and also Austria. But elsewhere across Italy, the Adriatic coastline and across Greece, plenty of sunshine to come. That theme continuing as we head into next week, and temperatures widely in the mid to high 20s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel. Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's coming up to, well, it's just 7 minutes to 1, and let's get more on the horrific killing of Charlie Kirk. Joining us in the studio is Charlie Peters. Charlie, you were on air last night when this story broke. I mean, just the most shocking news.
Shocking news, but even more shockingly, I think now, over 12 hours since the incident, we still are waiting for news about whether a suspect or a person of interest has been detained. The manhunt continues from Utah Valley University, where this shooting took place. Really quite astonishing that the FBI Director, Kash Patel, announced on X, on social media, twice that someone had been taken into custody, only to later say that they'd been released. A lot of confusion circulating, and we have seen some footage shared of what appears to be the shooter, or at least a shooter, on the roof in like a fishbowl environment. It's like an amphitheatre where we had Charlie Kirk speaking and that tragic final engagement he was making at the Utah Valley University. With the shooter on the roof, we're seeing him now circled there in red circle. I say him, we don't know who was involved in this shooting at this stage.
And this is just an incidental shot. The wider shot is someone filming the event and just pans around. I don't even know if they knew that they were actually filming the shooting.
I think you're right, and in this video we're showing you now of another angle taken by presumably students at the university. They were commenting about that person. If you're seeing a bit of a thumb there pointing, or a finger pointing towards that person on the roof. And last night, as we were reacting to the shooting, and discussion was being made about the distance, 200 yards, and a lot of people were saying this was like a very professional shot because it was a single shot hitting Charlie Kirk in the neck before he was rushed to hospital by his security team. I have to say, speaking to veteran marksmen overnight and this morning about this shooting, many of them telling me that that shot could have been taken out by someone who's just been to a range a few times, that you don't require particular expertise to hit a fairly static target from around 200 yards away. And there's also some discussion about the weapon that was likely involved. Some analysts saying online that they think it's probably a bolt-action rifle rather than an AR-15, which is commonly seen in school shootings and many of these tragic events in the United States. So a lot of discussion at the moment about who could have possibly done that. As you'd imagine, there are wildfire rumours spreading all over the place. Conspiracy theories are going mad. However, at this stage, we don't have any information on who was involved.
Charlie Peters, thank you very much. We're going to go live to Westminster now, speak to our political editor, Christopher Hope, because, Christopher, there's been news about what the Prime Minister has been doing, a phone call to Donald Trump.
That's right, the PM has phoned Donald Trump to express his condolences over the brutal killing of Charlie Kirk. It has touched across the board, across the political picture here in the UK as much as the US. I'm just back from a very long briefing with the PM's deputy official spokesman about the resignation of Peter Mandelson. Some new facts for you on this, that Vet Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, met with the Prime Minister this morning around 10 a.m. They agreed that Lord Mandelson had to resign as the ambassador. The King was then informed of that decision. The reason why that happened is the King appoints Lord Mandelson as the ambassador for the UK in the US. And then at 10:40 a.m, of course, MPs were informed in Parliament. So it's a very, very brief and quick meeting. The sacking is with immediate effect. He is now no longer the UK ambassador. That has happened immediately. The PM has taken prompt and decisive action, Number 10 says. He's been replaced by someone called James Roscoe, an experienced diplomat. He's a new acting ambassador. He will now, there he is on screen now for viewers watching the channel at home. He is now he will now oversee the state visit next week. Number 10 described the emails they saw overnight from Lord Mandelson to Jeffrey Epstein back in 2009, a long time ago before he became in the government, of course, as reprehensible. And once the depth and extent of that friendship was known by the Prime Minister, he felt he had to act and sack the ambassador. The PM was not aware, we're told by Number 10, of the additional emails, and there's no comment for now on whether Peter Mandelson receives a payoff or whether he will be leaving the UK residence immediately. And asked whether this affair raises question marks about the PM's judgment in appointing him in the first place, when, let's face it, a lot of facts are known about the friendship. We are told by Number 10 the PM is getting on with the job in hand.
Chris, just give us a sense of an atmosphere in that room, with you and your fellow journalists, the PM's deputy spokesman there. I mean, this was a very, very long briefing, by all accounts. We were supposed to talk to you a bit earlier in the programme, but clearly the government's under a huge amount of pressure here.
Absolutely, Tom. The convention is that reporters can't leave the meeting till it finishes. It went for about an hour and 10 minutes. I've never known one that long for a long time, not since the Brexit battles in the last decade. It was all about, really mainly about one man, Peter Mandelson. What do the PM know? The question marks for the Prime Minister now go to the heart of his authority in government. Why did he appoint Peter Mandelson to that job? Why did they overlook, what we knew about that relationship already, that Peter Mandelson stayed at Jeffrey Epstein's home, reportedly, at the same time that Epstein himself was in prison with those dreadful charges. Why did that happen? Surely that was enough not to appoint him, but instead that appeared to be overlooked. Now there's pressure back on the government over what it means for Donald Trump. It might be very embarrassing next week when Donald Trump comes here. The fact that the UK has moved to remove from office someone with links to Jeffrey Epstein. Well, of course, we do know from the past that Donald Trump also knew Jeffrey Epstein. It is very, very awkward, and the timing is dreadful for this government. And frankly, this has gone on for too long, I think. It looks to me, and you can't argue, it looks as though the PM is following the story, not leading it. And if you're Prime Minister, that's a bad place to be.
Thank you very much, Christopher. I hope Christopher will be joining us later in the programme to bring us more on that breaking story. That did sound like one hell of a briefing there. You wouldn't have wanted to be the Prime Minister's representative in that meeting, would you, trying to answer those questions, many of which you think are probably unanswerable?
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It is now 1 o'clock on Thursday, the 11th of September. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Dawn Neeson.
As we were discussing that incredible breaking news, Peter Mandelson sacked as our ambassador to the United States over his relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. He's been replaced by James Roscoe.
The hunt for murder of Charlie Kirk is still at large as Donald Trump reacts to what he's called a dark day for America.
For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals.
Yes, the tributes keep coming in for Charlie Kirk, a devoted family man who was married with 2 young children.
And it is, of course, the anniversary of a day that changed the world forever. Later this hour, we'll be live at a memorial service for the people who killed in the 9/11 attacks.
And Prince Harry is heading back to California today. We'll get more reaction to his first meeting with the King in almost 2 years. Just an astonishing day of news. The United States wakes up to a manhunt, a killer at large, a political assassination that will no doubt be scored into the history books.
Yeah, Charlie Kirk, a young man, a fierce fighter for free speech, a believer in debate, not hate, came to the UK many times to debate at our universities, which is what universities you would have thought would be about. Broadening your mind, about talking to people who may have different views to you. Charlie came over here and to debate all the subjects that are, you know, the hot topic moments that we're all talking about now.
And it was only a few months ago he was here at GBNews studios as well, speaking to our very own Ben Leo. I mean, he was such an influential individual, never holding an official position within the Trump White House, but I speak to some people in and around that world. He was very much a sort of liaison between the White House and the wider movement that elected Donald Trump.
Very much talking to the youth of America at the campuses, which is where he sadly lost his life in the most horrific assassination. He's 31 years old. He leaves a wife and two very young children, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. It is absolutely heartbreaking. And the one thing you can say about Charlie, and we have so much poisonous rhetoric in politics at the moment, on all sides. This is even a political point. On the right, on the left, there is so much vile language being used out there. And Charlie wasn't about that. He was about having that debate, about engaging, about discussing points that you might disagree on but that you could talk about. And you do have to wonder where we're going on both sides of the Atlantic when someone like him is just assassinated. And that's what it was. It was an assassination. I mean, if you know, the footage is online, obviously it's absolutely horrific. And you just can't believe that this is happening in 2025. And where are we going? Where's it going to end?
Well, we're expecting some more news out of the United States, as of course it is the morning now on the eastern seaboard. The sun is rising across that vast continental country. We will be getting more information, no doubt, throughout the course of this programme. Also going to be discussing the shock resignation, or indeed, should we say, sacking, of our ambassador to the United States.
We're still not 100% sure, are we? It's never been quite clear. I mean,
well, we'll try and work that one out throughout the course of this hour.
But of course, these are the big stories, but you're the ones with the big opinions. So do let us know what you're thinking on all the stories we're discussing today at gbnews.com/your say. But now it is time for the news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. The top story this lunchtime. Well, the UK has a new man in Washington, at least for now. Downing Street has confirmed James Roscoe, the deputy head of mission at the British Embassy, is stepping up as interim ambassador to the United States. That, of course, follows the sacking of Lord Peter Mandelson as the British ambassador to the US after emails revealed the true depth of his relationship with paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein. It comes just days after the former ambassador himself admitted further embarrassing emails were likely to emerge, including one in which he called Epstein his best pal. The Foreign Office says that correspondence was materially different to what was known when he was appointed. Sir Keir Starmer told MPs just on Wednesday this week that he still had confidence in Mandelson. But today, in the Commons, Foreign Office Minister Stephen Doherty confirmed his withdrawal.
The emails show, Mr. Speaker, that the depth and extent of Lord Mandelson's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein is materially different from that known at the time of his appointment. In particular, Mr. Speaker, Lord Mandelson's suggestion that Jeffrey Epstein's first conviction was wrongful and should be challenged is new information. And in light of that, Mr. Speaker, and mindful, as we all are, of the victims of Epstein's appalling crimes, he has been withdrawn as ambassador with immediate effect.
Well, that decision to remove him follows growing outrage across Westminster, with Health Secretary Wes Streeting calling the messages disgusting and Home Office Minister Mike Tabb describing them as sickening. And after pressing the government today with an urgent question, Tory MP Neil O'Brien said that Mandelson's removal was the only possible outcome.
This is yet another extraordinary error of judgment by this weak Prime Minister. And I pay tribute to the Leader of the Opposition for yesterday securing justice for the victims of Epstein. This raises massive questions. It is not just that Peter Mandelson said that Epstein was his best pal and that he loved him. It wasn't just that he brokered a deal for him while he was business secretary. We now, of course, know that he was working for Epstein's early release after he was convicted.
Turning to news in the United States now, and a manhunt is underway in Utah after the assassination of the conservative activist and close Trump ally Charlie Kirk. For plenty more on this and the latest lines we're getting into us in the newsroom, we've got our national reporter Charlie Peters with us. Charlie, what's the latest?
Well, Sam, the FBI and its associated federal agencies and state agencies in Utah are continuing that urgent manhunt as footage has circulated online of what appears to be the alleged shooter behind the killing of Charlie Kirk yesterday, the 31-year-old activist in Utah. This footage showing what appears to be a shooter on a roof, both moments before and after the shooting took place. We've already seen plenty of footage from around the amphitheatre area where Charlie Kirk was speaking moments after he was shot, where several, thousands of people were fleeing from that scene. But now speculation is rife with well over 12 hours since this shooting. There still is no suspect or person of interest in custody after a couple of people had been detained yesterday. That urgent manhunt continues with a shooting that has stunned the United States and also political movements worldwide.
Charlie Peters, thank you very much. And it's just turning to 6 o'clock in the morning in Utah there, so Americans waking up to that news. We will keep across the developments, bring you the very latest. In other news here at home, Labour's deputy leadership race has narrowed again, with Dame Emily Thornberry pulling out after failing to gain enough support. Her withdrawal comes just a day after Alison McGovern dropped out, leaving 4 candidates, now 3 still in the running. They include the Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson, former Commons leader Lucy Powell and Clapham MP Belle Ribeiro-Addy. The contest triggered, of course, by Angela Rayner's resignation last week over her tax affairs. Also at this lunchtime, Britain is stepping up its support for Ukraine with plans to begin large-scale production of advanced interceptor drones. Those drones, designed in Kyiv with British expertise, have already proved effective against the Iranian-made Shahed drones that Russia continues to launch, but at a fraction of the cost. The move comes after NATO forces in Poland shot down suspected Russian drones that violated their airspace, the first known NATO engagement of the war. Defence Secretary John Healey says the project is a first-of-its-kind deal. Well, the Prime Minister has called it a landmark moment in Britain's backing for Ukraine. And Londoners are enduring a 5th day of tube chaos as the RMT strikes have shut down underground services across the capital. The union has rejected a 3.4% pay offer and is pushing for shorter working hours, demands the TfL say they can't afford. RMT's boss has called on Mayor Sadiq Khan to hold a summit, warning more strikes could follow if there's no breakthrough. And with trains at a standstill, e-bike trips have surged by up to 75% as commuters scramble for ways to get around. That is the news on GB News this lunchtime. Next, though, let's take a look at the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here are those lunchtime markets for you. The pound will buy you $1.3503 and €1.1556. The price of gold, £2,679, 70 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 9,262 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 10 minutes past 1. We should say that we will be speaking to our political editor further next hour. This hour, he's off to the American Embassy for this memorial service commemorating the anniversary of 9/11.
Indeed. So let's go to the huge news that broke this morning. Peter Mandelson has been sacked as the UK's ambassador to the United States over his links to paedophile Jeffrey Epstein.
It's yet another huge blow for the Prime Minister, just 5 days before Donald Trump arrives in this country for his state visit.
James Roscoe will be the interim UK ambassador to the United States. That was revealed in the last hour in a Downing Street briefing, where it was also confirmed the Foreign Secretary and Prime Minister agreed Mandelson had to go earlier today.
James Roscoe himself, a former press secretary to Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. An experienced appointment there.
Experienced, and it would seem a safe pair of hands. Catherine, what's the latest?
Well, it's just a week and a half since MPs came back to Parliament and the Prime Minister announced phase 2 of the government. Since then, he's lost his Deputy Prime Minister. There's a Deputy Labour leader election going on. There's a huge reshuffle taking place. And now he has had to sack his US ambassador. It is really quite extraordinary. 2 massive sackings / resignations in less than a week. And only yesterday at Prime Minister's Questions, despite the birthday messages that had appeared from Mandelson to Epstein, a convicted paedophile saying, "We love you," Jeffrey saying yum yum about staying in his house, is the picture you see on the screen there of him in the bathrobe, the admissions that Peter Mandelson himself gave. The Prime Minister yesterday was standing by him. But what's happened today is there's been more revelations from Bloomberg, more emails, as Mandelson predicted would happen, where it's been very clear that when Epstein was being tried for child sexual offences back in 2008, and indeed after he was convicted, Peter Mandelson was standing alongside him, urging him to fight, saying, yes, you have been convicted wrongly, saying that, you know, we love you, you are our friend, and, you know, this is outrageous, effectively. So the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary met this morning in Downing Street, looked at the evidence, decided that this had passed the point of no return and that he had to go, and told the King, and Peter Mandelson has been sacked. That is very clear. He has not resigned. The Prime Minister has taken the decision to get rid of him. In his place, James Roscoe, this former Comms Secretary to the late Queen, who's been Deputy Head of Mission at the British Embassy in Washington since 2022. But all of this, of course, comes at the most horrendous time, given that Donald Trump is coming on this huge state visit next week, given that Donald Trump and indeed the government, up until a couple of days ago, thought that Peter Mandelson was doing a great job as the United States ambassador. He helped get that trade agreement over the line. There was an extraordinary press conference where Peter Mandelson stood behind Donald Trump. Donald Trump said that he was a good-looking fellow, complimented him on his accent. And also, of course, the fact that there are questions swirling around the president, too, over his own links with Jeffrey Epstein. So an absolute nightmare. I don't think the Prime Minister had any choice, but the difficulties, I think, are not going away.
As you say, it's not going to go away. I mean, this, to most people, sounds like a stupendous misjudgment on Keir Starmer in appointing Mandelson this role in the first place.
Yes, it does. And I think that is what lots of people will be saying. What does it tell us about the Prime Minister's judgment? And also the fact that, you know, last week he was standing by Angela Rayner for days and days and days, right up until the point that he wasn't. And then yesterday, again, he was standing by the US ambassador right up until the point that he wasn't. Of course, Peter Mandelson was a big figure. They knew it was a risk to bring him back. He'd been sacked twice in the past because of his links with wealthy individuals. And did they really do due diligence when they made that appointment? They clearly cannot have known all that has emerged now, because it's inconceivable that he would have been given the job if they had have done. But I think, yeah, there will be many, many more questions still being asked of the Prime Minister.
Catherine, it's not like our Prime Minister isn't a lawyer. You would have thought due diligence would be second nature.
Yes, you would. I think the argument currently being given is that really it's up to somebody who's being considered for an appointment to, you know, give any information that might be relevant across. I think it's relying on people being exceedingly honest. Now, of course, the Prime Minister knew that Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Mandelson were mates. He probably didn't know the extent of it. I mean, they're clearly saying that there's been materially different different information that has now emerged that I think made it totally untenable. But look, this is an absolute nightmare for a government that came back after a difficult summer of small boat crossings. They wanted to get back on the front foot, and so far this second year seems to be going even worse, if that's possible, than the year before it.
Well, Catherine Forster, on that note, thanks indeed for joining us live there from Westminster. Let's get some more on this now with the Labour councillor, Sebastian Salek. Sebastian, I mean, 10 days ago, the Prime Minister declared this was phase 2 of his government. How would you rank phase 2 on a scale of 1 to 10?
Well, there have certainly been some challenges, haven't there? What I'm seeing, though, is the Prime Minister is acting quickly, and that is the hope I'm taking from this, is that the second the Standards Commissioner gave his decision on Angela Rayner, she had resigned. As soon as that new information came to light last night, remember, all of this was dropping at about 9:30. I was busy doing sit-ups in the gym when all of this dropped. This morning, the Prime Minister meeting with the Home Secretary, making the decision. So even though it is felt maybe quite elongated, I don't think that's been the case. As soon as the
Sebastian,
information came
the
out,
Prime Minister
acted on it.
tied his colours to the mast. Question after question after question at Prime Minister's questions yesterday. He dug in when he needn't have dug in. It was clear as day that there was going to be more that was going to come out about Peter Mandelson. He had said so on television. He had told Harry Cole that more was going to come out, and lo and behold, more did come out. What judgment does it show the Prime Minister that he completely digs in front of the nation at Prime Minister's questions, only to then be forced to U-turn the next morning?
Well, it's a binary, isn't it? Either you're behind somebody or you aren't. You can't be halfway supportive of somebody who's in your administration. And the reason that that position shifted was that information came out last night.
Hang on, Sebastian, you can be halfway, because that's exactly what you said about Angela Rayner. Angela Rayner was referred to the Standards Commissioner. That was a holding position. Keir Starmer, if we're going to follow your first logical answer, and I think we can be generous and say, OK, fair enough, perhaps he acted decisively off the back of that investigation, well, then why can't we apply the same logic to the second example you gave, i.e., he could have launched an investigation, said, look, I'm not going to cast judgment until there's an investigation upon which we can make a call. He chose to do neither. This isn't the binary that you're suggesting.
No, the logic is consistent, because I think on this occasion it was pretty clear no investigation was needed. The situation moved so quickly that Starmer was able to take that action and say, look, no, you've crossed a line, you're no longer the US ambassador. If he were launching an investigation, he would have done it this morning, and instead he went for the chop and he said, no, you're sacked. And I think that was the right decision to make.
He could have done it yesterday.
I mean, there was more information to come. So why would you launch an investigation when
find the more information
that you're basing it on is incomplete?
You investigate to find that information. But we could all see what was going on. Why do you think Kemi Badenoch spent 6 of her 6 questions on this very subject? Surely it shows Kemi Badenoch could see what was going to happen more so than the Prime Minister. She's got better judgment than him.
I mean, I think that's a pretty big claim. I think we're splitting hairs, really. It's a difference of a few hours, really, at the end of the day. That what really matters is the fact that he's gone, which was the right decision. I think a lot of people will be really pleased to see that. Now we can move on, appoint a new ambassador, a new permanent ambassador, and get on with what's really important, which is addressing the concerns of people in this country. Remember, this is a bit of a distraction. It's all happening over in the US, but here, people are struggling. They have been for so long, and the government's focus has to be, I'm sure you would agree, on the living standards of people in Britain, rather than some kind of a distraction over the other side of the Atlantic.
Certainly should be. Although the government does seem to be creating distraction after distraction. But Sebastian, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Sebastian. That's Labour Councillor Sebastian Talk there. OK, now it's time for the Great British Giveaway, and it is a huge package. It's a camper, 4-berth camper, motorhome even, and a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash. Here's how you win it.
You're not going to want to miss our greatest Great British giveaway so far. You could bank an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. And if that wasn't enough, you'll also get to drive away in this brand new motorhome. With thanks to Marquis Leisure, this brand new 2025 Benimar Primero could be yours. It comes with all the mod cons you'd expect from a vehicle worth over £74,000 and comfortably sleeps 4 people. This prize package is worth over £104,000. And remember, if you can dream it, you can drive it away. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. The winner will be contacted live on GB News, week commencing 10th November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. OK, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. There's loads more coming up on today's show.
Yes, later this hour we're going to bring you live coverage of a memorial service in London for the people killed in the 9/11 terror attacks.
But after the break, we'll have the latest on the search for the killer of free speech champion Charlie Kirk, who was shot dead in Utah yesterday.
All of that and much more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dawdney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. 25 minutes past 1 is the time. And now for more on the latest of the killing of Charlie Kirk in the United States. Donald Trump has accused the radical left of being responsible for terrorism in the wake of the murder.
Yeah, the free speech champion who appeared on GB News earlier this year was shot dead in an event at Utah Valley University. The killer is still at large.
Well, 2 people who were considered suspects have been released after their initial arrests. But here's what President Trump had to say.
For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now.
OK, we're joined now by GB News national reporter Charlie Peters. Charlie, bring us up to date, please.
Well, we're now seeing some footage of what people appear to think is the person who was involved in this shooting on a roof about 150 yards away from where Charlie Kirk was delivering his talk to thousands of students at Utah Valley University. This footage has been floating around. You're seeing it on your screens now, a person there circled in red. Now, based on mapping that's been conducted, we assume that this is the Low C Centre, which is about 430 feet away, 150 yards or so from where Charlie Kirk was shot, in a sort of amphitheatre-style gathering location where he was speaking underneath that covering on a lone white chair in the middle of that space. So there was a clear line of sight, and if you are a marksman, you want high ground, you want to be shooting down in a clear line of sight direction. So from the footage that we're seeing, it appears highly likely that the person being circled is the person who conducted that shooting. However, the FBI, its Salt Lake City Bureau, which is the closest field office towards Utah Valley University, they still don't have anyone in custody as a person of interest or a suspect, having detained two people very shortly after the shooting took place yesterday. It's now 6 a.m. in Utah, coming up to 6:30, so we're well over 12 hours since this shooting took place. It's a long time for someone to get away from Utah Valley University, Tom and Dawn, and questions are very rapidly being asked of the federal agencies. Have they let this slip?
Charlie, that's what I was going to say. I mean, given how similar this appears to be the assassination on Donald Trump himself, it does seem there are questions to be asked about the security. Obviously, Charlie Kirk is not the President of the United States or even an elected representative. But it does seem questions to be asked about the security here.
It does, because even though he's not a politician, as you rightly say, Dawn, Trump saw this guy, his 31-year-old father of two, as a genius, a close ally. When he won the election in 2024, when he went to Mar-a-Lago to gather his allies, Charlie Kirk was there. Turning Point USA, his campaign group, one of the most influential grassroots conservative organisations in the world. He just returned from a speaking tour starting in Asia, in South Korea. This is the first event of 14 he was planning on US campuses. So he's not a politician, but he's a significant figure. And we were talking about this last night as the Rolling News was coming in. Does this now mean in the United States that commentators and activists now need to be thinking about active shooters, just like the President of the United States?
Big questions there, Charlie. Thanks for joining us. Let's jump to the United States now and speak to Sohrab Arami, who's the US editor of Unheard. Sohrab, thanks for being with us. I know that you knew Charlie Kirk, you'd spoken with Charlie Kirk. I mean, first of all, on a personal level, what does this news mean to you?
Well, it's really surreal. I've never had a situation where there's someone whom I know, whom I've appeared on TV shows and podcasts with, and even on stage at an in-person event, who then went on to be assassinated in this way. It's surreal in a disturbing and nightmarish way. And as Charlie said in the previous segment, it does raise the question of, can those of us who speak and debate and write and engage in public political contestation for a living, which is what makes free societies like ours so wonderful, can we continue to do that without having to have intense airport-style securitization? That's the most immediate consequence that I can think of that's lousy all around, no matter where you fall on the political spectrum.
Sohrab, how worried about his personal safety was Charlie?
To be honest, I never spoke to him about that. I don't know. Although, again, as you all mentioned in the previous discussion, this is a pretty prominent person, and he's a galvanizing figure, a polarizing figure. So I would have imagined there was some personal security or something.
Yeah.
But I can see what most people say is that you could just walk up to this event. There was absolutely no security.
But of course, I mean, he had close security around him to stop people sort of rushing up and attacking him like that. I mean, how realistic is it really to live in a world where you've got to scout every rooftop in the vicinity if you want to go out and speak in public? I mean, is this really the world that America is marching towards? We've seen not just the shooting of Charlie Kirk, but the shooting of the United Healthcare CEO, 2 shooting attempts on Donald Trump himself. I mean, it seems like this is a spiral.
No, I think the U.S. is going through a sort of cycle, and it is somewhat cyclical. The last time that I can probably think of historically is around the Vietnam War and the turmoil of 1968, the back-to-back assassinations of Dr. King and RFK Sr., and of course JFK a little earlier. So it's one of those febrile moments in our history, and I don't think that fundamental solution is securitization and having guards and plexiglass everywhere. That we need a deeper national healing and a reckoning with political violence, including, if this turns out, with a kind of left-wing political violence. It's not the only kind. I don't want to say there are right-wing lunatics out there as well, but especially in 2020, we saw during the pandemic, we saw a great deal of left violence excused, winked at, even sort of softly supported by mainstream Democrats and their media allies. Books like The Case for Looting and the sort of daily attacks on courthouses in places like Seattle and Portland. All of that, should be seen in a new light. And there's got to be a social reckoning with it. I don't just mean a crackdown, because otherwise, you're right, it's unlivable.
Sarah, one of the most shocking things about this is a 31-year-old man is a father of 2 very small children. And there are people celebrating his murder, regardless of your politics. There are people celebrating his murder online, posting memes of themselves, laughing and joking and saying he deserved it. What do you make of that reaction?
Well, first, I have to say, in terms of any prominent people, I haven't seen that. For the most part, it's reassuring that everyone from, of course, the president and Vice President Vance to Zohran Mamdani, the socialist aspirant to be mayor of New York, to Governor Newsom of California, have all just unequivocally condemned and have not. They haven't even done the sort of like, while I disagree with them, I think it's bad that he was killed. Just unequivocal condemnation. And Yankee Stadium even put up his picture during a game last night. So that's good. However, you're right. I mean, there are people online and even in person who have been giving interviews to podcasters and so on, where they say it's good that he died. And on one level, these people need God. They need to rediscover their consciences. But at another level, it's a symptom of a sickness in American society. We have a lot of lonely, angry, digitally radicalized, drugged up people in this country, deeply alienated. And these are pathologies that I don't have easy solutions to, but those sentiments that you mentioned are just a symptom of.
But also people who don't talk to each other. People who exist in silos and sort of almost don't see their opponents as human, are able to laugh or joke or rejoice in a horror like this because they don't see people who share views like those espoused by Charlie Kirk as really on their team or even as part of their own humanity.
Of the human team, yeah, exactly, or the American team. Look, I will say this was actually Charlie's great virtue. I didn't agree with everything he stood for, and I actually, we had some public disagreements, in fact, and some privately in text messages and so on. However, what his great virtue was to try to break that. That was his whole model, was to go to campuses and kind of set up a table, just like you saw at Utah Valley. And he would invite all comers. Come up to me, ask me a question, challenge me, I'll push back. And sometimes he would change his mind. And when leftists or progressive students would try to speak and some of his own conservative followers would try to shout them down, Charlie, you can find footage of this online, would tell his own followers, no, let that person speak. Let them say what they have to say. That's really deeply, I think, an American virtue. It's not exclusively an American virtue, but it is the best part of this civilization. And so that's why, as I've said since this happened, we really have to double down on his commitment to fearlessly speak our minds, debate things peacefully, robustly. Otherwise, this country loses all that's special about it.
Sarah, we have to ask you about gun crime in America. Obviously, we see mass shootings at schools. Charlie Kirk was a big supporter of the right to bear arms in America. And there were comments online saying, you support people bearing arms, you get shot. I mean, that is what happens in America. That's not me saying, that's what people are saying online. What do you make of that?
Well, look, I'm probably more of a gun restrictionist than Charlie was. I mean, I think it is too easy for anyone to get a really high-powered rifle in this country in a way that's I think that in some cases, both sides of this debate can be dishonest, where the pro-gun people say it has nothing to do with guns. It's all about mental health. And of course, mental health matters. All those other things matter. But at the end of the day, there's very few societies that have the level of gun crime that we have. But also that have this like really easy access to guns. Like you could kind of correlate the two things is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, yeah.
Conversely, the restrictionists will say, well, we're not trampling on the Second Amendment and there's not going to be, their solutions aren't honest.
Sadly, we're going to have to leave it there. But Sarah Rami, thanks so much for joining us, US editor of Unheard. We're going to jump across to a memorial event now taking place at the US Embassy in London to remember the victims of the 9/11 attacks 24 years on.
Yeah, over in New York at a memorial plaza near the bottom of Manhattan, survivors and relatives of the nearly 3,000 people killed in the attack will begin reading the names of the dead as New York's most sombre annual event takes place for the 24th time.
Well, let's speak to Hilary Fordwich, the political commentator in the United States. Hilary, thanks for joining us. This is a sombre moment for the United States, from one tragedy last night to remembering another 24 years ago today.
Yes, absolutely, Tom and Dawn. Greetings from Montana. I'm in the other part of the United States, and this is across America, probably very similar feelings on this tragic day. Yes, they're going to start the roll call, which they always do every year, of all the names of those who perished. But something in addition that's not talked about a lot is that, at least currently, there are about 140,000 people that are still alive and monitored due to the toxic dust they inhaled. And there have been thousands of deaths due to that. The firemen that, of course, experienced it and people in Manhattan. So that's another issue. And might I say also that the Queen, I remember former Queen Elizabeth, she went to the memorial service at St. Paul's Cathedral. And I've always shared with many Americans, I believe what she said that day was she said, grief is the price we pay for love. And I've actually shared her comments with so many people when they've lost loved ones. I think it was very succinct. It was very meaningful. And I believe it was one of the first times in history, 9/11, that the Queen actually had the Star Spangled Banner, the American national anthem, played at Buckingham Palace.
Hilary, it's 24 years on. Is the hurt still as bad?
Well, I mean, obviously, Dawn, time does heal all wounds for everybody, but it's still very prominent.
Hilary, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. We're going to go to the service in central London to commemorate this. We're going to jump there live now.
Was grace that taught my heart to beat, and grace my fears relieved. How precious is that grace appeared the hour I first believed.
Well, we're watching here a wreath being laid at the American Embassy in London, of course, of the many, many hundreds of people who were killed. There were, of course, a huge number of Brits. Let's listen in to what's being said.
My own story, which underlines the bravery we saw that day, even in the midst of profound tragedy. I was serving as the consular chief in the Bahamas, where many American tourists found themselves stranded when U.S. airspace closed. My consular team and I had gone to a hotel where U.S. citizens seeking assistance were gathered. We helped with many things that day, getting them medication, loans for longer hotel stays, and food. But one thing that we couldn't do was get people home. And so we found ourselves sadly repeating to one stranded American after another, "We're sorry, but we can't get you home today." And then we saw 3 imposing gentlemen making their way to the front of the line. We steeled ourselves to repeat our mantra yet again. But these guys were different. They were confident and driven, not to be deterred. "We are New York City firefighters," they said, "and we are going home today." My team and I turned to each other, nodded, and for the first time that day said, "Yes, you are going home today." And we got them home. It took a boat, a ferry, and several buses, but those guys got to New York to do what they needed to do for our country, what we needed them to do for our country. What I saw there was the spirit of America, the patriotism, the determination from those firefighters to put themselves in harm's way to serve others. I know each of you has similar stories from your own experience of 9/11. And in a moment, we will all have time to reflect as we join in a minute of silence to remember the attacks. We will then hear remarks from Ambassador Warren Stevens. The formal ceremony will end at 2 o'clock, and we will then offer light refreshments for those able to stay for a bit after the event. Now I ask that you please rise for the national anthem of the United States of America, sung by our colleague here at the embassy, Vianney Molina. Thank you.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Vianney, every time I hear you sing, it's unreal how frankly, damn good you are. As we now reach 1:46 p.m. here, the time the first plane hit the World Trade Center, would you please join me and observe a moment of silence for the victims of 9/11.
Let us pray together. Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let us sow love. Where there is injury, pardon.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Where there is discord, union. Where there is doubt.
Good afternoon, and thank you for commemorating the 24th anniversary of the September 11 attacks with us. We haven't done this in recent years, but it felt important as we enter this new chapter of our special relationship. I want to offer a sincere welcome if you're here representing a loved one who is a victim of the attacks. We're honored to have you with us. I want to begin our ceremony this afternoon by remembering Charlie Kirk, a true American patriot who was senselessly murdered yesterday in Utah. Charlie's work to influence debate and encourage young people to participate in the American political process is what democracy is all about. Harry and I were devastated by the news and are sending our love and prayers to his family at this time. Today, of all days, we remember the futility of violence and our unity as Americans, together with our allies in opposing those senseless acts of violence. 9/11 was, in recent history, America's darkest moment. A day that resounds in our memories and still leaves its mark today. It is often said that everyone can remember where they were on that fateful day. For me and my wife, Harriet, we had just returned from New York the night before, where we'd been held on the runway for several hours due to bad weather. When our neighbor alerted us that a plane had hit the World Trade Center, I assumed bad weather must have been the cause. But when I turned on the TV to see a perfectly blue sky, I certainly did not suspect a terrorist attack. It took the next plane, and then the next, and then the next, for the reality to sink in. Almost 3,000 people died in the attacks that day. Many more have died since from the illness and injuries they sustained, and we should never forget that families are still dealing with the aftermath. This was America's greatest tragedy, and 24 years later, the shock and heartache remain with us, because for many of us, this was personal. Those we lost were not numbers on a screen, but loved ones, friends, and colleagues. Working in finance at the time, I had many friends working in or around the towers. I spent the days after the attacks trying to contact those friends who I knew worked in the area. Every time my call was met with the sound of a voice, I breathed a sigh of relief. But for many, those calls were never returned. Today, we remember those unanswered calls. I'm aware that this was not just America's tragedy. The World Trade Center and the Pentagon were full of British bankers, insurance companies, defense contractors, and more, all working alongside their American and international colleagues. Tragically, 67 British citizens were among the casualties. I heard this morning that only 63 have been identified. In the aftermath of the attacks, it was the United Kingdom, our closest ally, that stood beside us as our nation grieved, rallied, and rebuilt. Just as the World Trade Center rose from the New York skyline to reach new and unforeseen heights, just as our nations rose from the ashes of World War II to become beacons of freedom and prosperity worldwide, so the friendship between the United States and United Kingdom emerged from the fires of 9/11 stronger than ever. 24 years later, we remain united in hope as well as heartache, and we are proud to stand by our British allies as we work together to bring peace and prosperity around the world. Thank you again for being here. May God continue to bless our special relationship. Now, if you have time, please join us for some light refreshments, and we hope to see you again next year on the 25th anniversary of these attacks. Thank you.
Well, there we were, listening to the ambassador speak at the US Embassy here in London, commemorating 24 years since the atrocity of 9/11.
Pain still felt, obviously, by people all around the world. 2,977 people lost their lives that day. And the one thing I didn't know, Tom, is that just this year, 39 firefighters have had their names added to the memorial wall at the World Trade Center. They lost their lives through illnesses and diseases that they contracted on that day, trying to save people's lives.
I mean, really just incredible.
The repercussions.
Repercussions that go on and on, but it's not just the people that were in the towers, of course, it's the people who were in the planes, the heroes who downed Flight 97
in Pennsylvania,
in Pennsylvania, the people working in the Pentagon. I mean, the scale of the attack was just extraordinary. I was just a small child when it happened. My main memory is that Woody Woodpecker wasn't on the television at the time.
Yeah.
But
I was working on the national newspaper. I walked into work that day and I didn't leave for a week. It was just the most astonishing event, and it changed the world forever.
Yeah,
it really has.
Of course, thousands of Americans died, but the second highest number of nationals were Brits.
67 Brits lost their lives, 4 of whom still have no identity. Heartbreaking. Yeah. This is GB News. We'll see you very soon.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Lots of showers to come over the next few days. Gusty winds blowing them along mean there'll be some sunny spells in between the downpours. Low pressure is the reason why. Sitting just to the northwest of the UK, tightly packed isobars here, bringing some very strong winds over the northwest of Scotland, and well, pretty persistent rain here for parts of the Highlands and the Western Isles. Elsewhere, as I say, we will see some sunny spells between the showers, which tend to zip through on that brisk and gusty wind. Temperature-wise, well, about average for the time of year. Feeling cooler than yesterday for sure. Certainly when the winds blow and the showers come along, it'll feel fairly fresh, generally 17 to 19 Celsius. As we go through the nights, a great deal of change. You can see the swirl there, the low pressure still dominant up to the northwest. The showers further south will ease off. Still plenty of them around for this evening's rush hour, however. A lot of spray, a lot of surface water on the roads. 1 minute it's dry, the next minute you're in a torrential downpour. There's the low pressure and the swirl bring more persistent rain to the Highlands and the Western Isles. Still pretty gusty here as well. The winds will ease a little bit overnight, but it's going to stay pretty breezy through the night. One thing we will see, certainly inland across many central and eastern parts, is the showers tending to fade away. So for many here, it will become pretty much dry from late evening onwards with decent clear spells. But it's far from dry in the northwest of Scotland. It stays pretty wet and windy here. Temperatures dipping down into single digits and a freshish start, therefore, to Friday. But for many, it will be a bright start again. Like this morning, much of the Midlands, eastern England, starting off with quite a bit of sunshine. But like today, the showers will get going once more and become pretty widespread, blown along by a fairly brisk and gusty wind. Again, like today, we could see a crack of lightning, hear a rumble of thunder, and temperatures around or a touch below average.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
This is your chance to win a motorhome and cash in our biggest giveaway to date. Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be the proud owner of this 2025 Benamar Primero. It comfortably accommodates 4 people and can be driven on your standard driving licence. Plus, you'll also bank an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Blinds close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 2 o'clock. Yeah, I'll do this bit, shall I? On Thursday, the 11th of September. Here's Tom Harwood and I'm Dawn Neeson.
Well, the incredible breaking news from this morning. Peter Mandelson has now been sacked as the UK's ambassador to the United States after his relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein was blown open, with new emails being leaked.
And the murderer of Charlie Kirk is still at large as Donald Trump reacts to what he's called a dark day in America.
For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst.
Coming in for Charlie Kirk, a devoted family man who was married with 2 young children.
And memorial services have been taking place in the United States and the United Kingdom to mark the 24th anniversary of the 9/11 terror attacks.
And Prince Harry is heading back to California today. We'll get the latest reaction to his first meeting with the King for almost 2 years. Well, thanks for being with us here on Good Afternoon Britain. We are expecting a press conference in Utah any moment now. This, of course, the state where that horrific shooting took place.
Yeah, the killer of Charlie Kirk is still on the large, at large even, and there is a huge manhunt going on at the moment. So bringing us up to date on this story is our national reporter Charlie Peters. Charlie, what more do we know?
Well, this press conference will be led by the FBI special agent in charge of this manhunt and also other public safety officials. It'll be interesting to see if we see the same personalities who were giving the press conference in Utah last night, who actually gave so many details in updates on the operation they were launching, involving a range of federal agencies and also local state authorities. There was a question in yesterday's press conference. I don't know yet if we are going to get questions this afternoon or in the morning as it is in Utah now, but the moment that Charlie Kirk was shot, he was being asked a question about shootings. And that did seem to stand out as quite vital information when that was raised yesterday. And a journalist asked, was that related to the shooting? Do we have that person in custody? They didn't provide any guidance on that either. So the FBI will be holding that press conference shortly. They'll be updating about their probe into the Charlie Kirk murder, and we're also going to get updates on the investigation as the gunman remains at large.
I should just say that we were looking at pictures, or attempting to look at pictures there, of Donald Trump, who is attending a 9/11 memorial service there live on the eastern seaboard of the United States. We can see Donald Trump there standing next to his wife Melania at the Pentagon, one of the 4 sites where planes flew into. Well, we can hear there the service taking place. The president standing there in front of a fire truck, as they call them in the United States. Many firemen amongst those who died in New York and in Washington, and of course passengers from Flight 93 also in Pennsylvania too. These 4 planes involved in that attack.
And the fire truck is quite poignant there because, as we learnt earlier on today, 39 new names have been added to the Wall of Remembrance at Ground Zero. 39 firefighters who, 24 years on, lost their life over the past year with illnesses and diseases triggered by what they went through on that day. So people are still dying because of what happened all those years ago. It's something, I know it's a cliche to say this, but it's a cliche that it's true. It changed the world forever, and we will never go back to a certain extent, the innocence we had then. And thankfully, we haven't seen the like again. We had the 7/7 attacks in London, obviously, which were horrendous, but nothing on the scale of the level of organisation that we saw 24 years ago with those four attacks.
Well, we could see Donald Trump there saluting as the anthem of the United States is playing. He's standing next to his wife, but on the other side of the podium, we can just make out Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of State for Defence there in the United States, or as the Trump administration now calls him, the Secretary for War, after an executive order renamed that department.
It is. I mean, obviously, it's a very poignant day for America because of the anniversary of 9/11, but also what we witnessed overnight with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, a 31-year-old leader of the MAGA youth movement, if you want to sum it up in that way. So emotions are incredibly high in America at the moment. And thoughts, obviously, certainly with Charlie's family. He leaves a young wife, Erica, and 2 very small children, a 3-year-old son and a 1-year-old daughter. So you can only imagine what thoughts are going through Trump's mind as we're watching him there saluting at this memorial, because he was very, very close to Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
He was almost a member of the family. And he would have regarded him as a second son, and Charlie was very instrumental in Trump's election victory.
And of course, Donald Trump came an inch from death himself after a bullet pinched his ear.
Yes, it was a centimetre, literally a centimetre.
I mean, just incredible. I wonder if he will mention what happened yesterday in Utah at that presidential podium here at this stadium. But perhaps we should speak to Charlie Peters, our national reporter, because, of course, this is a moment of tension in the United States as well as reflection, as we're seeing here.
Well, yeah, and I imagine the security ahead, the appraisal ahead of this gathering would have been reviewed especially cautiously today, because a gunman is on the loose who's targeted a right-wing political figure.
Mm. And Donald Trump has a reputation of being a businessman, very cold-hearted, very driven. But he's not. He's actually quite emotional. And his relationship with Charlie Kirk, and we heard when he addressed the nation afterwards, very emotional.
Specialist Greg.
Incredibly emotional, and of course the United States is going through convulsions at this time, a time of thinking back to 24 years ago when the United States was attacked on US soil for the first time since Pearl Harbor, but in many ways today also an equally poignant moment because of the political tensions that we're seeing across the country, writ large, through the targeting of such a prominent political activist. This follows, of course, the shooting of the United Healthcare CEO earlier this year, and or was that at the end of last year? And, of course, the 2 attempts on Donald Trump's life as well. as Charlie says, I mean, the security around this event will be second to none in light of all of this.
And Tom, as you speak about the security and the wider concerns that people have in the United States about political violence, in a survey conducted and released in May, nearly 39% of Democrats agreed with the idea that removing Mr. Trump from office by force was justifiable. 39%. And of course, that's just one side. There are extreme pulls toward violence throughout the political spectrum in the United States at the moment. And there have been attempted assassinations and also successful assassinations on a number of political figures in the country in very recent memory. But there are now active concerns within the American security apparatus about the rise of political violence at the novice level. The risks that we have had in Europe and the United Kingdom in particular about resistance to terrorism is the fear about the lone wolf actor.
Yes.
The shift away from organised groups like Al-Qaeda and the move towards, and we are commemorating victims of Al-Qaeda today, of course, and the move towards a force far more difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
Someone who's radicalised by themselves, who requires no assistance. And we don't yet have details, really, on what happened yesterday, in part because the agencies still don't have a suspect in custody. But what we do have the signs of, I think, are the clear signs, I believe, of a well-prepared novice.
As I say, you used the phrase marksman earlier on, Charlie, when you were talking about this incident. I mean, we don't know. We are waiting for the press conference and we will bring it to you as soon as we have any more details. But it seemed like it was a very, very precise shot, one bullet.
I have to say, I'm not sure it was that precise. It was a single shot, I think possibly from a bolt-action rifle, based on the depth of the crack that you can hear. But the fact that his neck was hit from 150 yards away points to me to a shooter with pristine conditions. 150 yards, high ground into an amphitheatre. It is a sniper's playground of a shot, that.
And Charlie Kirk completely still motionless target.
Still and sitting. To hit the neck, I think that points to someone who's not done this before. They may have practiced, they may have zeroed in their rifle at a range or a private space in the weeks leading up to it. I think there's a realistic possibility there'll be a digital footprint pointing towards the shooter, preparing the reconnaissance on that location, making a range ring, preparing for that shot. But I don't think that it was a precise shot because the neck was hit. At that range, at that distance, with the direction and the wind and all those factors taken into account, you would expect a marksman of skill to hit the target properly, not graze into their neck.
And that raises such serious questions. Because, of course, we're watching here a memorial service for the most meticulously planned terror attack that perhaps the world has ever seen. The coordination and sophistication of the highest degree, effectively flying 4 missiles into the United States, full of fuel, downing buildings, killing thousands. The threat we face today is people who, in many ways, will have self-radicalised, who won't have wider connections, individuals who can go out. I mean, we think of the sort of attacks that we've seen in the United Kingdom, the murder of Sir David Amos, the Manchester bombing. I mean, some of these things have been so much smaller in scale, but nevertheless devastating in their impact. Lone wolves, so much harder for security networks to intercept than a sophisticated attack that requires communication.
And of course, right now, Tom, we're seeing the President of the United States and the First Lady commemorating the most devastating Islamist attack in Western civilization, 24 years on. And that threat has remained consistent, and it has evolved and adapted in all sorts of horrifying ways in the 24 years since. But there are increasing new risks taking up that security pie that analysts have to look at, where they put their funds and their reconnaissance efforts, and increasing trends. When you speak to security analysts who are still within the apparatus of government or have recently left, they talk about the rise of LACIT as a left-wing and single-issue terrorism. People who are going out of their way, isolated on one cause, and that being a motivation for extreme violence. And we've heard Charlie Kirk, in fact, in the weeks before his murder yesterday, and I think I'm comfortable in calling it a murder rather than a killing, we have heard him talking about the rise of gender-related violence as well, that being a cause with the transgender political movement, that likely being involved in some of the extreme political agendas, sparking some of the political violence that has arisen in the United States as well. So there are just so many factors and variables and possible inspirations behind violence in the States.
The real risk of this is when it's a common refrain from one side of the political spectrum, particularly in the US, that words are violence. If you genuinely believe that a political opponent's speech is a violent act, well then surely it's self-defence to use your own violence in response. This is the real risk of people who are against free speech. This is the real risk of describing hurty words as if they are real acts of violence, because then that breeds violence in response.
We are going to expect at this press conference later on, Tom and Dawn, sorry just to move away from that point, we'll come back to that in a moment, I'm sure, but we are going to hear from the FBI and the ATF, which is a federal agency that perhaps viewers and listeners in Britain may not know. It's the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives. It's a domestic law enforcement agency. It's part of the Department of Justice in the United States. Their involvement, while perhaps not being at the forefront of everyone's minds, is going to be totally vital here, because if a weapon has been recovered or if information is known about the shooting, their analysts will be right at the front in terms of working out the source of that shooting and possibly working out where the gun was sourced from. That it's likely to be a rifle, of course. And I've said on your programme, and I was sharing this with colleagues this morning, that based on the sound of the crack, it does look to be, sound to be, a bolt-action rifle. But we'll get further information, I hope, from the ATF when the FBI come through, and I think we can now cross.
Well, Charlie, we can go live to Utah now and see that press conference that you were describing. Let's listen in.
Recognize the significance of the day. Historically, on 9/11, law enforcement has come together as a group to recognize and honor those that sacrificed to preserve the ideals of this country, the freedoms of this country. And instead, we find ourselves today hunting a murderer who chose to violate our rights, the rights of an individual within this country. Just to recap yesterday's events, at around 12:20 p.m., political influencer Charlie Kirk was at Utah Valley University participating in a student-sponsored event with Turning Point USA. Charlie was shot at that event. He was transported to a local hospital where he later passed. Last night, his body was moved to the state office of the medical examiner. We will continue to facilitate movements to get him home today and with his family. Yesterday, during the investigative process, we located a couple of persons of interest. We interviewed those individuals, and after releasing them and after clearing them of being suspects, they faced scrutiny, they faced threats. We asked the public to be patient with the investigative process. These individuals were not suspects, they were people of interest. We ask that you do not impose into those people and that investigative process. They don't deserve that harassment for being subject to that. I'd like to thank all the investigators that are involved in this. They have worked around the clock, all day yesterday, through the night last night. Investigators from the State Bureau of Investigations, from county, from city agencies, the university, our federal partners with the FBI, the ATF, and many others. Those are just a few of the people that we have involved in this. I'd like to thank all of them for their strong work. Through all that work last night, we were able to make a few breakthroughs. We were able to track the movements of the shooter. Starting at 11:52 a.m., the subject arrived on campus, shortly away from campus. We have tracked his movements onto the campus, through the stairwells, up to the roof, across the roof to a shooting location. After the shooting, we were able to track his movements as he moved to the other side of the building, jumped off of the building, and fled off of the campus and into a neighborhood. Our investigators have worked through those neighborhoods, contacting anybody they can with doorbell cameras, witnesses, and have thoroughly worked through those communities, trying to identify any leads. We do have good video footage of this individual. We are not going to release that at this time. We are working through some technologies and some ways to identify this individual. If we are unsuccessful, we will reach out to you as the media, and we will push that publicly to help us identify them. But we are confident in our abilities right now, and we would like to move forward in a manner that keeps everyone safe and moves this process appropriately. Last night I communicated with Erica. That family's devastated. As a Commissioner of Public Safety, as a father, as a husband, I can only imagine what that family's going through. The heinous event that happened yesterday is not Utah. This is not what we're known for. Over the past several weeks, we've seen this state come together to help families in mourning, come together as a community to show what Utah is known for a state of character, of service, of camaraderie, of a neighboring feel. We will not stand for what happened yesterday. We are exhausting every lead. We have every officer invested in this, every investigator, every local agency. The outpouring of support from the law enforcement community has been astounding. We are investing everything we have into this, and we will catch this individual. Having walked through the crime scene, through the hallways of this school, through the classrooms, I can't imagine what the people on scene felt as well. A horrific event where some of them barricaded in classrooms, some of them ran in fear. Can't overstate the tragedy and the horrific event that yesterday was, and how we will work to bring to justice the actions of one individual or any other individuals that assisted in that. Our state has gone through a lot, and we will come out successful. And with that, I'll turn the time over to Special Agent Bowles in charge.
Good morning. My name is Robert Bowles, and I am the Special Agent in charge of the Salt Lake Field Office. Following yesterday's tragic shooting of Charlie Kirk, FBI agents have been working around the clock in coordination with our law enforcement partners. We are and will continue to work nonstop until we find the person that has committed this heinous crime and find out why they did it. This morning I can tell you that we have recovered what we believe is the weapon that was used in yesterday's shooting. It is a high-powered bolt-action rifle. That rifle was recovered in a wooded area where the shooter had fled. So the FBI laboratory will be analyzing this weapon. Investigators have also collected footwear impression, a palm print, and forearm imprints for analysis. Now, I understand there are a lot of questions about motive. I assure you that all leads, tips are being fully investigated. As of this morning, we have received more than 130 tips. We thank the community for that. The FBI has brought every resource to bear, and we will continue to do so throughout the course of this investigation. The FBI's mission is to protect the American people. It's to uphold the Constitution of the United States. Any attack on the First Amendment is an attack on the very foundation of our democracy. That is why we will relentlessly pursue this case and the shooter until we find him. We also continue to grieve with the family and the community. It's our community. If you have any video or images from the shooting, we ask you to please submit them to our digital media tip website at www.fbi.gov/Utah Valley Shooting. You can also call the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. We truly rely on the public's help in these types of cases, and no tip is too small or insignificant. Thank you.
Right, we're now getting some questions coming in back towards Bo Mason, the public safety official. So we'll wait for his response as it comes through. But extraordinary information that a bolt-action rifle has been recovered. Tom and Dawn, we had taken some analysis.
Shall we just listen in to Bo Mason?
Suspect blended in well with a college institution. We're not releasing many details right now, and we will soon. But right now we're not. But that individual appears to be of college age. We are confident in our abilities to track that individual. If we're unsuccessful in identifying them immediately, we will reach out for the public's help and the media's help in pushing those photos. That was a new development overnight, working through the night, studying those cameras. So that's something that's new and that we're working through right now. As far as the security, I cannot speak to that. Neither the Department of Public Safety nor the Federal Bureau of Investigation was involved in the planning or security of this event, and that'll have to be a question later for other agencies.
So that's a good question, and it's a question that goes to the safety of the community, right? No, not in those woods. We've walked through those woods and secured it. As to the community, I can tell you that this was a targeted event. We don't believe that the community is at risk. However, we are exhausting every resource to find him, and we will do so. So I can't comment specifically on his face or any details such as that, as it's continuing to be a part of the investigation, and again, we'll release that shortly. However, we're doing everything we can to find him, and we're not sure how far he has gone yet, but we will do our best. We have images of the suspect. Again, as part of the investigation, we're not releasing any details such as that right now. We are exhausting all of our resources to be able to collect those, but that's, again, part of the investigation. Excuse me? We are working on that, but again, part of the investigation that I can't release. Not at all. We've got complete and total support from everyone, from the director on down, and it's been an incredible supportive environment so far. All I can say is that we're working the investigation the best we have with the environment we're given. So thank you.
There we have it. We were listening to a briefing there from the Federal Bureau of Investigations. We were listening to Agent Bo Mason as well as Robert Bowles there in Utah, speaking about the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Okay, Charlie Peters.
Well, quite extraordinary information being released in that press conference. I've been saying with both of you in the last couple of hours that based on the sound of the shots and testimony I'd taken from expert marksmen and also just my own experience with rifle shooting, I thought that would have been a bolt-action rifle. The crack did not sound like a typical AR-15 that many people associate with this. This analysis now appears to be confirmed with the FBI saying they had recovered a bolt-action rifle in a wooded area, and that had gone now to the FBI for some review.
Charlie, just explain the significance of this. They said a high-powered bolt-action rifle. Are these more easily obtainable than a semi-automatic weapon, for example?
They're certainly older. So I think it does add to the overall analysis that we're gathering here of who this shooter might be. Not a trained or even sort of military-style style marksman, but someone who's grabbing sort of old school weaponry, the sort of stuff you might see in a regional shooting range. Certainly not the high-powered modern weaponry that you might associate with these sorts of shootings.
Which then leads to a very difficult position for the security services, for the FBI. If it had been a recently purchased weapon, there would have been a paper trail. This would have been a pretty fast investigation. If this has been a gun that's been lying around for decades, that has just been used, I suppose that is far harder to trace.
Yeah, that is, but with the ATF, the other federal agency working with the FBI on this, the trade, the intelligence trade they'll be using now is sort of called material exploitation, where they can take an enormous amount of information from a cartridge that's been fired, from the rounds in the chamber, from any further information on the weapon. They'll exploit every inch and centimetre of that rifle to gather further information about it. So even if it isn't directly traceable due to its age, they'll be able to gather information about where the ammunition was sourced, even perhaps where it might have been purchased. So that information will be gathered, I imagine, quite rapidly. But we also heard during that briefing from the FBI special agent that the suspect involved in this case had jumped off the building and fled through local neighbourhoods, which had been assessed. We then referred to a wooded area nearby where this bolt-action rifle was recovered. And speaking through some of the wider evidence they've got now, they've also got a footwear impression. They didn't say where that had been recovered, and also some further prints as well, saying they'd received over 130 tips to their hotline and welcoming more information to come in on that. We also heard the special agent referring to the suspect appearing to be of college age, again pointing to the wider assessment taking place that this is not an experienced shooter, a veteran of many years of experience of firing, but likely a young person, a novice, with a single shot on a high-powered rifle, missing the clear, what would be likely be the main target, such as the centre of the mass or the head, and hitting the neck instead. So much information to gather from that. But you can see also the stress in those faces. They haven't got a suspect in custody. And now, well over 7 a.m. in Utah, they will be feeling an enormous amount of pressure.
It is so easy to abscond in the United States. There aren't any, checks at the border between state lines. It's quite possible that this shooter has driven through the night, has gone through state after state after state after state. I mean, this is a continent-sized country where the individual could have escaped.
And there was clearly a plan in place for this shooter to get away as quickly as possible. Footage we've seen of the person that appears to be the shooter on the roof shows them fleeing, and the moments after that shot was fired from a high-powered bolt-action rifle, as we now know. It was then found in a wooded area where the shooter had fled to after killing Kirk. That's according to Robert Bowles, the special agent from the FBI in the Salt Lake City field office. And the investigators, Bo Mason, who is the public safety chief for Utah, saying they have good video footage of this individual. Now, strangely, they said that they won't release that footage because they're still working to identify the suspect through facial recognition technology. However, I think with all this pressure, Tom and Dawn, they're almost certainly going to be faced, if they don't locate, find, fix and capture this person shortly, there will be pressure to release that information, to release those visuals, to bring in more of a public involvement.
It is very reminiscent of the attempt on Donald Trump's life at a similar gathering where we weren't given any information about the shooter at all, were we?
Yes, no information was given there, but also want to stress the investigators in this case kept saying he. So that is further information as well. They've referred to them as being male, which I think would have been presumed, but not guaranteed. And the police have now, they're saying that they were able to track the movement of the shooter onto campus, so onto the location as well, arriving through various stairwells to that roof on the Losi Centre, about 150 yards away, what was described there as a shooting location.
It stands to reason there that the university will be covered in CCTV. All universities are. They will have been able to tell the suspects sort of build, physicality, all the rest of it, even if this individual covered their face, which is most likely. I suppose the the clever thing that this shooter did was go as quickly as possible to an area that was not built up, to a natural area where there weren't Ring doorbells or university CCTV, straight into the woods, from which point this individual went, we simply do not know. Interesting, though, an appeal to the people of Utah as they wake up this morning, now, what is it, just after 7 a.m. in Utah, an appeal for any Ring doorbell footage or doorbell video footage.
Going through neighbourhoods after jumping from the roof of that building, or a roof near it at least. I mean, looking at the Low-C Centre, this shooting location, which is just on your screens now, and the distance away from that amphitheatre where Charlie Kirk was speaking. It's not a short building, certainly plenty of height to it on that location we were just seeing there, just come off that footage now. But when you were seeing that building, if the shooter, described as he by the special agents, has arrived to that location through stairwells, getting down quickly, clearly didn't want to go back through that route, took a different route to exit. Now, Tom, you're talking about that Ring doorbell footage they'll want any further information, of course, but the wooded area, the FBI will be scouring that location very aggressively now as well, because that could leave a critical clue as to the next steps. That's where the trail's gone quiet now in terms of the briefing, and we're approaching it could almost be a full day since we get information on when this person was last engaged.
They did give us very precise timings, didn't they, Charlie? They said the suspect arrived at 11:52.
That's right.
The assassination, because that's what it is, let's not beat about the bush here, happened at 12:05. And then the shooter left straight away. So it was quite clearly the timings were very well planned.
Yeah, very precise. And that does point to, that gap, well over 10 minutes, points to what we've seen in terms of some of the footage we were playing out earlier today, which we had a red circle which we'd applied to show the location of the shooter, filmed by, we presume, students or those attending the Charlie Kirk talk at the campus, arriving and just noticing that someone was on the roof. What a strange thing to see, worthy of being filmed, and also captured on the live stream as well. So up there for quite some time, which again was a trend that we saw in the Butler, Pennsylvania attempted assassination of Donald Trump during his campaign, where people saw a person on the roof for some time. Again, I just want to say, I keep coming back to this, that also adds to my view that this is a novice appearing and taking out a shot for the
novice,
first time.
absolutely, but is a novice the right way? Certainly the first time that this person has carried out an assassination,
right.
but is novice the right way to describe someone who has so meticulously planned what took place? Charlie Kirk speaking about shooting, being shot, and then the seemingly very well-planned escape of this shooter, carrying the gun with him, for instance, going into the woods, escaping areas of cameras.
But Tom, it's clearly well prepared, and it's clearly rehearsed, I think, based on the information we've got. I mean, reconnaissance almost certainly would have taken place, the preparedness of the shooting location, and all further information that we do expect a marksman to gather before carrying out such an appalling act. But the mistakes that have been revealed in terms of the amateur nature of the shot by hitting the neck from such a distance at such a range, and also the length of time that they were on the roof before taking the shot.
I wanted to ask you about that single shot, Charlie. You say a high-powered bolt-action rifle. I don't know if you've used such a rifle in your time with the army, but this, is it easy to fire quick successive rounds, or was this a sort of only one chance to get this right sort of thing?
Well, it would depend on the reloading mechanism of the bolt action. So if it was a single action rifle, which is what we heard, it would require the shooter to get it right 100%, no second chance. Whereas in the Butler, Pennsylvania case, it was very much the case that he fired several shots, which is why there were wider injuries and a fatality in that case, with someone who had attended Donald Trump's speech being hit and killed and murdered in that case before that shooter was themselves shot. But because we don't have more information about the rifle beyond the fact that it was bolt action, I think it's highly likely that it would have been a single shot and then immediately moving away. And in the frantic nature of that sort of space, I think it's very difficult for them to be able to find the time to reload the cartridge and fire again. Particularly, you've seen the rapid reaction that took place there. I think it's highly likely that this marksman, whoever they are and wherever they are now, they were hoping that they would have that one shot and they would take it.
Given the febrile reaction to this in America, there are lots of sort of anger and worry, and we heard at the press conference there about the students barricading themselves into classroom. Obviously in America we have so many shootings on campus, so the students themselves were terrified. But it's an incredibly volatile atmosphere there. Do you think, Charlie, that we will hear more about this shooter sooner rather than later?
I think so, based on the information that the FBI have released, and there's no guarantee that they've released everything they know. I'm sure they're holding back plenty.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're holding back plenty of intelligence about where their investigation is taking them now. But just thinking about what we've got from them now, Dawn and Tom, if you imagine the sort of the intelligence cell in the Salt Lake City field office for the FBI, they've got prints, they've got a location, they've got CCTV footage, and they're working through sort of technology to get the identity via facial recognition. So they've got so much information there to work with. They'll also then be doing some material exploitation analysis on the rifle itself, which will be an absolute mine of clues. It will be filled with information. And they'll also, I think it's likely that the rifle also would have had additional ammunition in it, depending on the way it was loaded. I think even though, Tom, I said that it's highly likely that the person was shooting and hoping for a single shot, I think they would have brought additional ammunition with them. Of course, that's not being confirmed, but I think it's just highly likely based on the scenario, especially for a novice, which is what we're assessing at this stage, at least I am.
The FBI were also keen to point out during that press conference, though, that they are obviously exhausting every resource, but they don't believe the shooter is a danger to anybody else, which is obviously reassuring to those who are concerned that they do have a killer on the run and there is a manhunt underway.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll wait for further updates from the FBI, and I hope to hear from the ATF as well as part of their analysis on the weapon. Yeah. But with the information that's been provided, it'll be fascinating to hear where this manhunt takes us.
Well, Charlie, thanks so much for analysing that briefing there in Utah. As we get more, of course, we'll go straight to it.
OK, now let's head back to our political editor, Christopher Hope, who has been at the 9/11 memorial service at the US Embassy in central London. Christopher.
That's right. I think you saw on your screen there Warren Stevens, who's the US ambassador to the UK, marking that moment, that sombre moment for the US and indeed for the UK, when, of course, nearly 3,000 people were killed by those attacks on the 11th of September 2001, including 67 Britons. Now, earlier today, I was in Grosvenor Square with the US ambassador for his first broadcast interview. He had just laid a wreath at the memorial there in Grosvenor Square to the 67 Britons who died, of course, only 4 of whom's body were recovered. The rest that weren't recovered, and the families often go there every year to mark their passing. And he gave us his first ever interview to GB News, and here's what he told us. Ambassador Warren Stevens, thank you for joining GB News today on a solemn day for so many Americans and Britons as we recall those terror attacks on the 11th of September 2001. What did 9/11 mean to you?
Well, I think everyone who was alive then remembers where they were on 9/11, and certainly being in my former life in the financial services industry, just knew the sheer numbers of people that worked in the towers, and what this loss, what the loss of life was even going to be. We just knew it was going to be horrific. It was disbelief, really. I mean, I couldn't fathom. I couldn't fathom when I saw that the first plane had hit World Trade Center. I just couldn't fathom how the pilot did it, never dreaming it was intentional.
And you were there the day before in New York.
We were there on September 10th and came home that night, and the weather was awful. Sat on the runway 3 hours, and when our friend and neighbor called us about a plane that hit the World Trade Center, I assumed it had to do with the bad weather, and when we turned on the television, it was a bluebird day, and you just couldn't believe it.
And are there any lessons we can draw from those attacks today?
Well, the lessons of 9/11, goodness. I think from our standpoint, we have to be ever vigilant. There are clearly people in the world who don't like America, don't like the West, don't like our ideals, and they want to do us serious harm. And so we just have to be on guard all the time about that. And I think, that's something I've learned. Not something I've learned, but I've learned since I've been here, is how closely our intelligence agencies work together. It's really, really impressive and essential. And so, I think that goes a long way towards keeping not only the UK and US, but our allies safe too.
We're speaking in Grosvenor Square, central London, at the memorial to the 67 Britons who died in those attacks. I don't want to be drawn into politics, but it's your first interview as the ambassador to the UK. What do you want to do with this role?
It really is a special relationship between our two countries, and I'm going to do everything I can to strengthen that relationship. I talk frequently with members of the government. I want to help the UK become the best ally it can possibly be and strengthen and grow its economy, and that's really what I'm focused on.
Britons are shocked here by the senseless killing of the political influencer Charlie Kirk. What should the response be? Should the political rhetoric be dialed down, both in the US and in the UK?
I think the political rhetoric ought to be dialed down everywhere. I knew Charlie, and if we're not going to be allowed to debate ideas on a college campus openly and freely, then where are we going to be able to do that? And so Harriet and I feel for his family, his now widow, and their 2 children and his whole family. It's just a senseless killing. And it will not stifle free speech. Someone else will pick up that mantle. That's just essential. It's an essential right in both of our countries.
Are there any lessons we can learn in the UK about the importance of freedom of speech, that it should be protected? There's been people arrested, of course, in the UK for messages left on social media.
We're concerned about that. But we've experienced censorship in the U.S. as well, and I think the Prime Minister seems to be understanding maybe some of these things are going a little too far.
Looking forward to next week's state visit by President Trump to the UK, the second such visit accorded to him personally. What are you expecting from the state visit?
Well, the President has a very close relationship with the royal family, and he is honored to have this second state visit. And I suspect there'll be specific things that come out of it as it relates to UK-US
trade deals or
trade or initiatives. And the discussions have been ongoing about that for many weeks and months. And I don't know if anything specific will be announced, but we're very close to some things. And I feel like the state visit is just going to be great. It is a visible reminder to the world of the special relationship, and I think, as I said, it's a great honor.
And finally, on the special relationship, is it a real thing? You are the physical embodiment of that as the US ambassador to the UK. It is mocked by others, though. Does it matter? What is it all about, this special relationship?
Well, it's a very real thing. Last night, I attended the event marking the 85th anniversary of the Battle of Britain at the RAF Museum, and it was, as an amateur historian of World War II, even before the U.S. was officially in the war, Americans were flying and dying for the RAF. And people from other countries were too. So there is no relationship like this. I mean, we like to say France was our first ally, which is true, but the UK is our most important ally, and that's still the case.
Ambassador Warren Stevens, thank you for joining us today on GB News.
Thank you.
Warren Stevens there, the ambassador, the newly arrived ambassador here to the UK from Washington, in his first broadcast interview and giving it to GB News. Now, we heard there he talked about the political rhetoric should be dialed down after the senseless killing of Charlie Kirk. He said he feels for Charlie Kirk's widow. He's concerned about censorship in the UK, but he thinks that Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, understands it has gone a bit too far and thinks it will be brought back. And also just looking forward into next week's state visit here, the second one by Donald Trump. He says he's not sure that specific trade deals will be signed, but he says it'll be a big moment, I think, for the UK-US special relationship, and he was, of course, singing that to the rooftops.
Well, Christopher Hope, thank you very much for bringing us that. A GB News exclusive, the first interview with the US ambassador, the new US ambassador here in London.
Yeah, okay, on a fairly seismic political news day. Obviously, we had Peter Mandelson being sacked, and also the horrific assassination overnight of Charlie Kirk. We have Charlie Peters with us in the studio now. Charlie, just sum up what we have covered, what we've heard in the last couple of hours.
Well, we're hearing from the FBI and public safety officials in Utah who've given quite an extensive update on their manhunt, the search for the male suspect at large for the shooting and assassination of Charlie Kirk yesterday at the university, the Utah Valley University. The suspect is on the run and is thought to be of college age, confirmed to be male. Authorities have found a high-powered bolt-action rifle, which is what we assessed before the press conference. That's been sent to an FBI lab for analysis, according to the special agent giving the briefing. They also said that they found impressions of a palm print and forearm imprint. So that is likely going to be the location of the shooting, where the shooter took up a prone position ahead of firing that single fatal shot which hit Charlie Kirk in the neck. They also said they've got images and video of the suspect, which they're not choosing to release at this time as they continue to assess facial recognition technology, but they did say there were hints that that could be released further on, particularly if the pressure continues on them and they don't detain a suspect. And we also heard, and I think this is the most interesting bit in terms of the state of their investigation now, the movements of the shooter, pointing towards clearly CCTV footage that they've got of the shooter jumping from a roof to get down from that building and get away, and that wooded area nearby where that rifle was discarded. We don't know what was in the rifle, and by that I mean, you know, ammunition, cartridges, etc. But it's a high-powered bolt-action rifle, so it's likely, I think, to me, that there have been several rounds in that chamber for a bolt-action to reload if that first shot was missed, though it's likely they wanted just one shot in this case. Of course, two other people were detained yesterday, persons of interest. They've both been released, and they have received threats, according to those who gave us that update in the last hour. And the state that the FBI are in now, they have someone who's conducted a political assassination on one of the most influential conservative activists and commentators in the world, and they don't know where they are, based on the information that they've provided. And just looking at the location of Utah Valley University from that roof, with just 6 police officers on duty at the time, plus his private security team, but of course they rushed away to take Charlie Kirk to hospital. That shooter could have travelled a very long way indeed in the panic and pandemonium that occurred after that shot.
Charlie, I've recently been reading a lot about political assassinations. I think a lot of people have in the wake of what we've seen in the United States over the last 12 or 24 months. It took 1.5 hours for authorities to find Lee Harvey Oswald, the killer of JFK. It took days to find the killer of Abraham Lincoln, who'd managed to escape and cross 3 state lines. Given that technology has moved on quite a way since the mid-1860s, this individual could have absconded hundreds of miles in the time since this shooting. I mean, this is going to be perhaps not just a nationwide manhunt. I mean, how far could this individual really have got? This is a needle in a haystack investigation.
Well, there's an airport just 45 minutes away from the location where the shot was fired, and there's a parking lot just outside the building from where it was fired as well. So There is, I think, a serious concern in the United States, and we've seen it from analysts over there reacting to this, including former FBI agents, that this man could have travelled very rapidly indeed after the shooting took place. And the fact that there was a wooded area as well, we don't know how far
Charlie,
they've
we're
gone.
going to have to just interrupt you briefly. Let's go back to Arlington, where Donald Trump is about to address a memorial service to mark 24 years since 9/11.
In closing, a reading from Scripture, Romans chapter 5, verses 3 through 4. We rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, endurance produces character, and character produces hope. On this day, 24 years ago, we suffered. In the years since, we have endured. Our service and sacrifice have forged our character, and today we stand in hope for the future of our great nation. The young soldiers who take the oath give me hope. The young cops who wear the badge give me hope. The young firefighters who answer the call give me hope. The young agents who patrol our border give me hope. The life, example, and even death of Christ follower and American patriot Charlie Kirk give me hope. Sheer courage, no matter the arena. Charlie, we love you. We know that you have heard the Lord's words. Well done, good and faithful servant. Full heart, clear eyes. Like those on 9/11, he will never be forgotten. So I thank God for all of you and all of our fighters from that day to today and beyond. May God bless our warriors as they ruthlessly seek our enemies on behalf of the fellow citizens they love. We owe you and all of those who witnessed 9/11 nothing less. It is now my great honor to introduce to you our Commander-in-Chief, President Donald J. Trump.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much. Before we begin, let me express the horror and grief so many Americans at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk have felt. Charlie was a giant of his generation, a champion of liberty, and an inspiration to millions and millions of people. Our prayers are with his wonderful wife, Eric, and his beautiful children. Fantastic people they are. We miss him greatly, yet I have no doubt that Charlie's voice and the courage he put into the hearts of countless people, especially young people, will live on. I'm pleased to announce that I will soon be awarding Charlie Kirk posthumously the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The date of the ceremony will be announced, and I can only guarantee you one thing, that we will have a very big crowd, very, very big. Thank you, my fellow Americans. 84 years ago this morning, the banks of the Potomac were filled with the clamor of construction workers who broke ground on the building now known as the Pentagon on September 11th, 1941. At the time, it was the biggest building ever built. From that moment forward, this structure stood as a monument to American strength, power, and cherished American freedom. Exactly 6 decades later, on September 11th, 2001, those same walls, built with the sweat and muscle, blood of our parents and grandparents, were scarred by flame and shaken by terror as our country came face to face with pure evil. On that fateful day, savage monsters attacked the very symbols of our civilization. Yet here in Virginia and in New York and in the skies over Pennsylvania, Americans did not hesitate. They stood on their feet and they showed the world that we will never yield, we will never bend, we will never give up, and our great American flag will never, ever fail. That terrible morning 24 years ago, time itself stood still. The laughter of school children fell silent. The rush of our traffic came to an absolute halt. And for 2,977 innocent souls and their families, the entire world came crashing down so suddenly. In the quarter of a century since those acts of mass murder, 9/11 family members have felt the weight of missed birthdays and empty bedrooms, journals left unfinished and dreams left unfulfilled. To every member that still feels a void every day of your lives, the First Lady and I unite with you in sorrow. And today, as one nation, we renew our sacred vow that we will never forget September 11th, 2001. Amid the horror of that morning, some used cell phones and office lines to whisper their final words to those who mattered most. They whispered indeed. At 8:59 a.m. aboard United Flight 175, Brian Sweeney called his wife, Julie. He told her, "Do good, go have good times. I totally love you. I'll see you again. I'll meet you up there." 4 minutes later, his plane hit the south tower of the World Trade Center. At 9:12 a.m. aboard American Airlines Flight 77, Renee May called her mom. Just the day before, Renee had learned that she was 7 weeks pregnant, but she never got the chance to share the news. She simply said, "I love you, Mom." 25 minutes later, Renee's plane struck the Pentagon. So violent, a strike it was. At 9:53 a.m. aboard United Flight 93, Elizabeth Waineo called her stepmom. They're getting ready to break into the cockpit. What do I do? I love you so much. They're going to break in. 10 minutes later, Flight 93 ended in the hallowed field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. At 10:25 a.m., Tom McGinnis was trapped on the 92nd floor of the North Tower when he told his wonderful wife, Elena, on the phone, "There are people jumping from the floors above us. If we get out of here, it'll be a total miracle. I love you, darling. Take care of Caitlin, beautiful daughter." 3 minutes later, the tower fell. Out of the ash, we witnessed the awesome power of that incredible love. We've seen it rise again. Out of the wreckage, we watched unbelievable courage suddenly take form. And out of the darkness, we saw the timeless truth of American character shine for the world to see. In America, we take blows, but we never buckle. We bleed, but we do not bow. And we defy the fear, endure the flames, and emerge from the crucible of every hardship stronger, prouder, and greater than ever before. Last year, we were a dead country. Now we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. In New York, there were heroes like Chuck Costello, a 46-year-old elevator mechanic, and a member of the Knights of Columbus. He selflessly ran into the World Trade Center to free people trapped in the elevators. His body was not found until the following January, deep under the debris. While going through his belongings, Chuck's widow, Mary, a phenomenal woman, discovered a personal prayer written in his own words, "Help me to light the way for those in the dark, and when I enter the darkness, let me not panic, but patiently wait to remember the light. Beautiful words. When the time came, Chuck ran boldly into the darkness of hell on earth, and now he shines in the light of heaven above. We remember him this morning. That day we learned that the American heroic spirit was all around us. We saw it in the police officers, the great firefighters, the service members here at the Pentagon, and in the hearts of every American who answered history's call. One such hero was Army Sergeant First Class Steve Workman, who was on the edge of the impact zone when this incredible Pentagon was hit. He was right there. After leading hundreds of people to escape routes, Steve turned back and plunged into the inferno itself. Pushing through the debris, he came upon a severely burned Navy lieutenant, the only survivor from the Navy Command Center. Only one. The wounded lieutenant looked into Steve's soul and said, "Don't let me die." Steve replied, "I won't. I've got you. Just hang on." He wheeled the lieutenant out of the wreckage on the back of a maintenance cart before getting in the ambulance and taking him to Walter Reed Hospital. That man Steve saved, Lieutenant Kevin Schaefer, went on to join the elite team of CIA operatives who located Osama bin Laden. Steve, you're an American hero. We appreciate it. We appreciate what you've gone through. Please stand. Please stand. Where are you? Oh, good-looking man. You're a good-looking guy. You remember that day. You remember that day. Good. Thank you very much, Steve. That was something. That was something. In the years that followed, America's warriors avenged our fallen and sent an unmistakable message to every enemy around the world. If you attack the United States of America, we will hunt you down and we will find you. We'll go all over this sometimes magnificent earth. We will crush you without mercy and we will triumph without question. That's why we named the former Department of Defense the Department of War. It will be different. We won the First World War. We won the Second World War. We won everything before that and in between. And then we decided to change the name. Well, now we have it back to where we all want it. Everybody wanted it. Everybody is so happy to have it back. You will fail and America will win, win, win. The enemy will always fail. 24 years have passed since that Tuesday morning in September, and an entire generation of Americans have come of age in a totally different world. While they cannot remember the agony of that day, they are carrying on the legacy of those who lost. Around 8:30 a.m. on the morning of the attacks, Army Lieutenant Colonel Kip Taylor sent an email to his friends and family describing the joys of fatherhood and his excitement for the upcoming birth of his unborn son. He wrote, "After you have kids, there are days that you just get going and you say, 'Hi, honey, I'm home.' What we do until that moment pales in comparison, but just that little statement, 'Hi, honey,' so American, so beautiful." But that's really the point of it all, isn't it? An hour after he sent that email, Flight 77 flew into Colonel Taylor's Pentagon office and claimed the life of a very proud father and true patriot. 6 weeks later, on October 25th, 2001, Colonel Taylor's son, Luke, was born. Luke then tragically lost his mom to cancer when he was just 2 years old, leaving him to be raised by his father's brother. As a young boy, Luke asked his uncle about the folded flag on the bookshelf, and when he learned about his dad's decades of devotion to the Army and the horrors of September 11th. That's when he learned. Luke carried that memory with him and joined the ROTC as a college freshman. He graduated just last year, and I'm pleased to say he is with us today as a second lieutenant and doing very well. He's rising quickly in the infantry, preparing for Army Ranger School. He's spitting image of his dad, they say. Luke says that every time he puts on a uniform, he feels connected to his father and to our country. But it was a father he never knew. Luke, your parents are together in heaven, and they could not be prouder of the man that they have produced. They produced you. Those two great people produced you. Luke, please stand. Thank you. You look good, Luke. You look good. They're looking down on you. They're very proud. This morning, we recall the light of America's best and bravest and the love that they showed in their final moments. In their memory, we make a solemn pledge and a noble promise. We will honor always our great heroes, and you are our heroes. There's a group of people that don't want to talk about our heroes, but we will always talk about our heroes, and that's the way our country is, and that's the way the people feel. We will defend the nation they served, the values they upheld, and the freedom for which they died. We will support our troops, we will protect our families, and we will preserve the American way of life for every future generation. We will build taller, grow stronger, fight harder, and soar higher. And together we will go forward as one people with one heart, one fate, one flag, and one glorious destiny under Almighty God. May God bless the memories of those who died and the heroes who fought and the soldiers who still stand watch. May God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
That was Donald Trump there, speaking, of course, on the 23rd anniversary of 9/11, and very, very movingly on what was already an incredibly moving day